Okay.
Good evening. We're going to call the special meeting of the Verona Zoning Board of Adjustment to order at 7:32 p.m. on October 16, 2025. Would you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Secretary, would you please read the notice of this meeting and call the roll?
The notice requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been satisfied with respect to this meeting of the Township of Verona Board of Adjustment, which is being held in person in the ballroom of the Verona Community Center located at 880 Bloomfield Avenue, Verona. The time and date of this meeting were included in the annual meeting notice posted in the Community Center and sent to the official newspaper of the Township, the Verona Cedar Grove Times, at least 48 hours preceding the start time of this meeting. The agenda and instructions on how to comment will be provided at the appropriate time. All meetings are recorded. Those wishing to speak during any public comment period should only provide their name and municipality. Street addresses are not required. Please be advised that should a member of the public choose to state their street address, it will not be redacted from this recording. Dr. Cortez?
Here.
Mr. Mathewson?
Here.
Mrs. DiBartolo?
Here.
Vice Chair Weston?
Here.
Chair McGinley?
Here.
Mr. Tully?
Here.
Dr. Rees?
Here.
Board Attorney Macera?
Here.
Ms. Smeesh?
Here.
And Ms. Tenweir is not here.
All right, we will start with some general information for the public. This board deals with the issuance of variances from the Verona zoning ordinance. That ordinance establishes specific requirements for the land area in the township and regulates not only the uses permitted, but the size of the lots, setbacks required, parking, signs, conditional uses, and numerous other such regulations. An applicant is never entitled to a variance. Applicants must meet specific criteria contained in the state municipal land use law by satisfying certain legal standards of proof. The burden is on the applicants to show that they should be granted the specific relief requested. Depending on the type of variance requested, applicants will need to prove special reasons, undue hardship, a balance of benefits, and other criteria. These are legal proceedings. Public meeting notices have been published, neighbors have been notified, applicants and their representatives will provide sworn testimony and be subject to cross-examination. Any action this board takes at this meeting will be memorialized in a resolution document prepared by our legal counsel that will be reviewed and adopted, typically at our next regular meeting. At that time, any variances granted will become effective. That said, we are a board that conducts its business in a fairly informal manner. Applicants are sworn in, tell us what they want to do with their property and what they're asking the board to do. Board members will question witnesses, and then members of the public may question those witnesses. At the conclusion of the testimony, members of the public may make a statement regarding the application. After closing the public portion of the application, the board will deliberate and render a decision. If you're following along on our agenda this evening, we are up to item E, approval of minutes, and we have no minutes as this is a special meeting, and for the same reason we have no resolutions, which moves us to new business and the application at hand, 2025-10, 546 Bloomfield Avenue, also known as 10 Park Place. Counselor?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Nicholas Palma, Broad Street, Clifton, on behalf of the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, the application was submitted, was deemed complete. Notice has been proper. Notice has been deemed proper, so the applicant may continue.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Palmer.
I would like as my first witness to actually call my planner, Sam Bellamy.
Please do.
Mr. Bellamy, could you state your full name, your business address, and spell your last name for the record, please?
Samuel Bellamy, last name Bellamy, a professional planner with the firm Dresner Robin. Our address is 30 Montgomery Street, Suite 530, Jersey City, New Jersey.
Thank you. Can you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Bellamy, can you give the board your a brief synopsis of your training and experience?
Sure. So I am a licensed professional planner in New Jersey. That license is current and in good standing. Also certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners. I have a master's in city and regional planning from Rutgers University. I appear frequently in front of boards in New Jersey, including many in Essex County.
I would submit to the board that Mr. Bellamy be accepted as a licensed planner in the state of New Jersey.
He's accepted?
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Bellamy, are you familiar with the application at hand?
Yes, I am.
Did you visit the site?
Yes, I did.
Did you visit surrounding areas around the site?
Yes, I did walk along the corridor along Bloomfield Avenue.
If you're more comfortable, you may sit down.
Oh, thank you. And did you form opinions regarding this application?
Yeah, I did review the zoning ordinance as well as the master plan and all the material that was submitted as part of this application with respect to the D1 use variance that we're seeking, as well as the prior zoning permit approval and subsequent denial that was part of this application timeline.
All right, can you give the board your opinion regarding this application?
Yes, certainly. I did have a number of exhibits I want to enter. Perhaps it'd be best to do that at this point, and then I could identify them as I go. The first exhibit is a existing site conditions photo log that's dated with today's date, October 16, 2025, prepared by my firm Dresner Robin. These photos were from my site visit to the property a couple of weeks ago.
That'll be A1, Council?
Yes.
Is this mic on? Is this on? Can you hear? Okay.
You can lift it out.
All right, and then I guess A2 would be an aerial exhibit of the site, also prepared by my firm Dresner Robin with today's date, October 16, 2025. This is an aerial exhibit of the subject property. And then A3, again, another aerial exhibit. This is of the surrounding area of the property. That is dated October 16, 2025, prepared by Dresner Robin. So I'm going to do a couple of things, walking the board through both the operations of the facility. I did print out a plan of the architectural plans I want to walk through to kind of go through the operations. I'm going to start with that and then get into the justifications for the D1 use variance that we are seeking. I don't think we need to mark this. This is from the building plan that's part of the submission set. So this shows the plot plan. The address here is 546 Bloomfield Avenue. That's block 1703, lot 68. As you can see, it's an irregularly shaped through lot. We have about 49 feet of frontage on Bloomfield Avenue and about 40 feet of frontage on Park Place. So it's an L shape with one building at the corner of Bloomfield Avenue and Park Place. The event space in question makes up the predominant area of the ground floor, but there's also some other commercial uses in the front at the bottom of this page, including a barber shop, and then there's residential units above it. In the back of the property, there's number of surface parking spaces. The 3 spaces adjacent to the rear stair are part of the lease for the event space. Moving into the actual diagram and layout of the space itself. So you can see there's a ballroom in the front of the building that's approximately 971 square feet. That's identified as the Royal Grove Room, and that has a posted occupancy of 64 people. Then you walk through a corridor, there's a bathroom that's used for that front ballroom space, as well as a small kitchenette. It has a fridge in there, a microwave, and some counter space. There's no preparation of food or cooking of food on site. It's all brought in either through a caterer or through whoever's renting out the space. And then it's, maybe small preparation on site, but no cooking of the food. Getting into the back of the building, you have a much larger ballroom that's identified as the Palm Royal Room. It's approximately 2,270 square feet. That has a posted occupancy of 151 people, and this accommodates larger parties. The main entrance to that front ballroom is through the main entrance to the building on Bloomfield Avenue, and the main entrance to the back ballroom is from actually the side of the building, the side parking lot here, which has access to the municipal lot through an adjacent property. The property itself is located in the town center zone district. Permitted uses in that zone include retail stores and retail services establishments, a variety of different restaurant type uses, banks, theatrical and motion picture theaters. So it's a variety of commercial, retail, restaurant type uses. Many times with zoning codes, they're kind of antiquated, where over time uses change, and you might have more of a niche use that doesn't get captured within a specific zoning use that's called out as a permitted principal or conditional use in the zone. So I think that's what you have here with this event space. I did review the zoning definitions as well as permitted uses in other zones, and really there's no exact use that captures what occurs on the site and what the use itself is. Event space, it's for weddings, birthday parties, religious ceremony parties, bar mitzvahs, communion parties, those types of uses. As I mentioned, there's no cooking of food on the site, so generally people hire a caterer to bring in food, and it's served buffet style within the spaces. The users do not have a liquor license, and they don't serve liquor themselves. As part of a contract, when a person rents the space, they're required, if they're serving alcohol, beer, wine, or liquor, to have a licensed bartender serve within the facility. So it's a licensed bartender serving, but it's not through the ownership itself. It's through whoever rented the space, either space in the building. So I mentioned some of the areas. Generally, it's one use at a time, but there are times where both spaces can be rented out. They do have dedicated bathrooms. The back ballroom does have 2 bathroom spaces as well as their own kitchenette. And then the front ballroom has 1 bathroom space and a small kitchenette. And there's a hallway separating the two different spaces. As I mentioned, there are 2 different entrances that are used for each space. So they can be operating events in both spaces simultaneously. Some other spaces within the building, there is an office in the back of the building. There's a storage room. The office is generally where one of the 2 owners would occupy when events going on. So there are cameras throughout the space. Those cameras go directly to the owner's phones. So they're able to monitor the rooms as an event's taking place. And one of the 2 owners are on site throughout the events occurring. So I think that goes through the operational questions. Um, I'm happy to take questions on that at this point, or if not, I could go through my planning rationale, whichever is the preference of the board.
Are we going to be hearing from the registered architect?
The architect is not here now.
Okay, can you speak then to the use of the other space, the other tenant?
The space here in the corner, I believe it's a barber shop when I visit the site. And then
Okay.
there's a residential unit above with separate access in the front of the building.
That is not our property. We don't use that property.
No, but this building is a mixed-use building, and as such, the use classification per the International Building Code needed to be upgraded to an assembly use as opposed to a business use, which was not accurately depicted on these drawings. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that because there's other things that a change of use encompasses when that is triggered.
Yeah, I'm not, as a planner, I'm not a licensed architect, so I wouldn't be able to speak on those questions.
Mr. Bellamy, looking at the photograph of Palmetto on the street, say, is the barber shop to the right or to the left?
It would be to the right of the entrance.
Does that have anything to do with this property, with this use of business?
So it's one building, it's a two-story building on the site. It is separated into different spaces, lease spaces. My understanding is the owner leases the event space diagrammed here and has no lease on the adjacent business that's under the landlord's total property, but it is on this property and part of the building.
Counselor, just so we know who best to direct our questions to, what witnesses are you expecting to call
I have one
tonight?
of the owners who testifies.
Okay, so the planner and the owner of
Yes.
the business, not the building.
But the site of the Palmetto itself.
Okay, any other witnesses?
No.
As the planner, can you testify, are there windows in this site?
In this event space site? Yes. So there are storefront windows located along Bloomfield Avenue. Those windows do have a protective film on it to block out the sunlight. I was there at around sundown, and there's extreme sun coming in through those windows. So I think the intent there was just to kind of shade the window so you're not getting direct sun impacts. I believe there's also some windows along the rear of the building as well. But those windows, the ballroom itself, the larger ballroom does not have any windows within that space. It's only the front ballroom and then the office and storage spaces in the back.
Can you talk about the ingress and egress to this space?
Yeah, so the front ballroom is the primary entrance is through Bloomfield Avenue. My assumption is the parking for the site is generally, it uses the municipal lot, which is adjacent to the property. So the property here is in red. The municipal lot is back here, which is paid parking. If someone's using that municipal lot, they would either go down Park Place to the front of the building through Bloomfield Avenue, or there is an alleyway between the adjacent building and this property that you can get through access through the municipal lot to Bloomfield Avenue. So that's the front space. If someone's occupying the rear ballroom, the direct access would be from the side of the building. There's a staircase there that goes through a small corridor into the bigger ballroom. If someone does have ADA needs, they can go through the front of the building, and there is a shared corridor, so you can get to that back ballroom from the front of the building as well. It's just generally not used for that purpose.
Do you happen to know if this building is sprinklered?
I do not. I do know as part of this original submission, so there was a zoning permit the applicant did submit for a zoning permit for an event space. That permit was approved at the time. From there, they did hire an architect to put together drawings, which is what you see here. Those drawings were reviewed by the township. There were permits issued for fire and building permits, as well as a CO issued for the site. So that's generally the process. So my assumption is that it would comply with with all current building and fire codes, given a CO was issued. But that's really the extent that I could speak to those questions.
On a little broader basis, can you look at the requirements for principal permitted uses in the town center zone and see where this event space would qualify?
Yeah, so as I said, I did review the principal permitted uses as well as the definitions. It doesn't fit squarely under any of those uses. It's really not a retail service. It's not a retail sales. It's not a restaurant. As I said, those use categories are generally umbrella use categories and don't always get updated and reflect specific uses. Prior to this use, there was a dance studio that's not defined in the ordinance as well, or specific permitted uses. So, it's hard to predict why the zoning officer did issue the zoning permit for this change of use. My assumption is, they're familiar with the zoning code, familiar with uses that get zoning permits, and, they may have believed that it fell under that umbrella based on, prior zoning permits issued along Bluefield Avenue, but that's, to the extent speculation on my part. Based on my review going into this application, if I was to review this fresh and provide a recommendation to my client, it likely would be this use probably needs a D1 use variance, but you need to submit a zoning permit to get that official determination. I was not involved with that zoning permit determination. I came on this process late. But, our clients did go through the process that they needed to go through with the town, and it was a year and a half later that zoning permit was pulled. So now we're here before the board, seeking the D1 use variance, which I understand as well why the new zoning officer would say, this use doesn't fit squarely with any of these permitted uses, and to really belt and suspenders, you need a use variance to operate an event space. So I do see both ways. As a planner, reviewing, I do see. I think I lean more towards the conservative side, where yes, this isn't a specifically permitted use, and as such would require a D1 use variance.
Are you prepared to present all of the pluses and minuses that go along with a D1 use variance?
Yes, certainly.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, just for the record, the previous use as a dance studio was pursuant to a variance that was issued. So just again, for the record. Okay.
If there was property anywhere available in Verona in another area, where would this event space be allowed?
1 second. So that's a very good question, and was part of my exercise as well of, is there another zone that would permit this type of use? I think the closest defined term and permitted use would be on-site caterer. That's probably the closest. And again, I don't even know if that's exactly, I wouldn't describe this as an on-site caterer. It's really an event space that has catered food on it. So I really don't think there's any defined term or permitted use in Verona that really captures what this space is. It's really kind of under, it's a niche use that is kind of falls between a couple different use categories in my professional opinion.
And I believe we're consistent with other towns where if it's not specifically stated as permitted, then it's not permitted.
Generally, yes, most municipalities have language, and Verona does as well.
When you were walking the area, did you notice how many parking spots are in the municipal lot behind?
I was there, I think, around 4 o'clock on a Thursday, and there was plenty of parking in that lot. I don't know on a Saturday night.
Do you know how many spots are there?
In the parking lot itself? No, I did not count the spaces.
Can you speak to the off-street loading requirement?
Yes, I do believe this type of use would require off-street loading. Currently, the loading operation is through the side of the property. A caterer would pull up, offload the food. I do believe that's on an adjacent property, and I'm not aware of any easement that allows this space to operate there. I do believe there's also a loading on-street loading zone on Park Place, as well as the municipal parking lot. So, in the event that this side parking lot cannot be used for loading, I think those two spots would be where loading would occur for this space.
Did you perform any type of traffic study?
No, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I wouldn't be qualified to do that.
Can you speak to any kind of soundproofing that was done in the building?
Yeah, my understanding from discussions with the client, they did not add any additional soundproofing within the space. They did go through the building permit process. I don't think any was required. So there was no additional soundproofing measures that took place.
You mentioned the window tinting. Is that, can it be retracted, or is that on there, basically, it's on there full time?
I don't want to misspeak. I believe it's a film that was added to the window. It
can't be like blinds where it could be lowered and,
not on an hourly or daily basis. No, it's I guess semi-permanent for the windows itself.
Question for Mr. Macera. I'm sorry. Related to liquor licenses, so I think we have like 4 or 5 in town based on population. So it's permissible to come into a space with an outside entity and serve liquor?
It's not prohibited under our local ordinances. There is an ordinance, 23313, I think, that has requirements for serving liquor, 133-12, excuse me, that has requirements for serving liquor. Those requirements are spelled out in the ordinance. They include that there has to be an open, not an open window, but a window to be able to view those who are serving liquor. There are no other, it's really not a detailed ordinance. So it regulates, but basically does not highly regulate, let's say.
And just kind of going back, this applicant tried going through the proper steps and the proper procedure as part of this. It was through a misidentified zoning permit that were wound up here, after the fact 2 years later. So it's not a case where they tried skirting around the rules or misrepresented what they would be operating. I think in their original zoning permit, they took the proper step, reached out to the zoning officer, got a permit, got building permits, got a CO. So I think they really did try to go through the proper procedures. It's unfortunate that, that zoning officer identified it as a permitted use when really they probably should have got flagged there, got denied, and they would have been before this board before investing into the property, making improvements to the space, and going forward. But this really isn't sometimes I'm on the end where we're before boards asking for forgiveness because they just did something without getting any permits or approvals. This really isn't the case here. They did get the approvals. They just were not proper, I guess, when they got them.
One of the problems we run into is that people who show up here generally is because they didn't like the response they received. If they like the response they received, depends on how long it is before we actually find out that it was incorrect.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel much more comfortable being here for this situation than, someone just, doing a project or work on a house or on a business without getting proper approvals. It's never a comfortable spot to be in, and it happens way too frequently.
Should have been here last week.
So if I don't know if there's any, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I have another question. So I understand that parking is not required in the town center zone. Is that your understanding as well?
That parking is not required.
In this zone?
I couldn't tell you what the exact parking requirement is here. We are asking for a D1 use variance, so generally, bulk variances are subsumed because there's not a specific parking requirement for that type of use. I believe based on my review of the TC zone there's not specific parking requirements and could be satisfied through a municipal parking lot.
Right, okay. So, I would argue that they kind of go hand in hand. We can't evaluate a use that, is attracting X amount of people just in a vacuum. We can't, that's not easy for us to do. But there is, an assembly hall parking requirement of one space per 100 square feet of gross floor area. So based on the occupancy that you had mentioned, 67 in the first and 151 in the back, that would necessitate a boatload of parking.
Yeah,
Is that right?
It's about 3,000 square feet between both ballrooms. So that would be, you said one space per 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's 30 parking spaces, right? And so that we're not going to hear any testimony as to the surrounding lots. Am I right?
Yeah, so the testimony I can provide, there's 3 on-site parking spaces for this specific tenant. Those are occupied by those either owner or both owners when they're on site. They're also used by the cleaning service that comes after an event. So really staff is parked on site. The remaining parking is all through the municipal parking lots or street parking, which is paid parking through the town. I did not do any studies that, at peak hours of when these events take place, what the availability of parking is.
I think that that's a real missed opportunity. I think that we would probably feel more comfortable as a board hearing that.
To your knowledge, are those 3 parking spaces assigned to this particular unit, or are they the only 3 parking spaces available to the property?
No, it's my understanding it's part of the lease that those 3 spaces are for this specific tenant. And then the remaining, I guess, 4 spaces would be, I think there's 1 for the residential unit, and then the other 2 would likely be for the other tenant within the building.
Thank you. Question for council.
Yes.
Our council.
Oh, sorry.
He's ours. Town center doesn't require parking for permitted uses. Is that an assumption? If we're talking about a D1 variance to let someone come in, would they still come in under the no parking required?
Technically, yes, but it's part of the burden of the applicant to show the positive criteria and the negative criteria. The positive criteria being that the site is substantially suited for this purpose. Along with being substantially suited for this purpose would be parking. Because this use is not permitted in the town center zone, there is no parking standard. However, the board should keep in mind that there is no parking standard in the town center zone based upon the permitted uses. So presumably, if NFL football were allowed in the site, then the town center would have parking requirements for that use. Generally, the answer is no, but again, it's part of the burden on the applicant to show as site suitability that there is parking available.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else from the board have questions on this part of what the witness has testified to? I'm gathering that you're going to have several parts to your testimony.
Yeah, I think that would kind of be the best way to proceed. It just breaks it up a little bit, and as I talk about each aspect of this application, I think opening up to questions would be.
Counsel, we usually let the public ask questions of the witnesses. Would you prefer to have that appear at the end of his presentation?
I have no objection if the board wants to do this piecemeal as well, as long as the public limits it to where we're at
Where we're
now,
at.
and we don't go off into the weeds and waste the night, that's all.
Okay. Seems fair. Would you care to share that mic with the public?
Yeah, I'll take a seat for a little bit.
If there's anyone from the public who would like to ask a question of the planner on the testimony that he's presented so far this evening, this is the time for specific questions. If you would, please come up to the microphone. Your name, not your address, but you're from town. What? Oh, and spell your.
Hi, Sharon O'Donnell, O'Donnell, and I'm a resident of Park Place. Just two bits of information that you brought up. You said that Park Place was a loading area. Can you expand on that a little bit more? And are you aware of any timing restrictions? How long can a loading, first off, can you clarify, loading, do you mean like loading trucks that might be necessary to prepare for the event? Is that what you mean?
Correct. On Park Place,
Okay.
I believe there was striped and
Okay,
signed load
so specific to that area, are there any timing restrictions? How long, what time of day, how long can they be there? Speak to just some more specifics about the loading area.
Beyond that, there was on-street striped and signed loading. I'm not aware of the timing, if there's specific hours or how long a loading
Yeah.
is.
As a resident there, that would be very important information, so if at a later date you can come back with that, it would be greatly appreciated, because the noise that is currently, well, not currently, they're not in operation, but when they were in operation, the noise was significant and very disruptive, and so that's important to me. The other question I had was, currently, as the parking exists now, where would the attendees of these events park?
Yeah, so all attendee parking would be through municipal parking lots or street parking.
Okay. And do you know of any time limits on that parking? You know, how late into the evening? Because previously, as a homeowner, we experienced parking late into the night, even after the events had finished. So that was very disruptive. Noise constantly, every weekend. A quiet weekend was lost when the client was there.
Yeah, so it is a municipal lot. It is paid for parking. It's either through an app or I believe there is a machine
Yeah,
there.
no, not how it gets paid, but how long people who are using that lot are permitted to. Because my experience living there was that there was parking after the events had finished. The attendees would sort of reassemble or, little after party, little hangout. And I'm just wondering how long they're permitted. Yeah, but that's not what, we need to stick to what was presented now. So you did present parking, and so that's another question.
Please, no comments from the audience. You'll have an opportunity to come to the microphone if you like.
So that would be another bit of information that would be really helpful in, putting my concerns at ease. How long can people assemble in the parking lot? Are there limits?
Yeah, so I'm not aware of any limits specifically, but as a municipal lot, it would be regulated by the township, I would assume,
Yeah.
police department. It is a public lot.
Mhm.
So when I mentioned that attendees would utilize this parking lot, it's not exclusive for events. So there's many other businesses, restaurants, bars.
Right.
Along Bloomfield
Sure.
Avenue that would also.
And those places close during their business, they're closed, so patrons would not be using that spot. And that lot is filled by the patrons, by the attendees of the events that are held at Palmetto. Those events go beyond the time of we'll just call it typical business for the other businesses at that location. And when the events finish at Palmetto, they do not leave. They hang out in the parking lot.
You'll have a chance to make a statement at the end.
You're
If you could
absolutely
just
right.
limit it
Excuse
to
me.
the
So
question.
thank you for your time. Those were my questions. Okay.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to ask a question of the witness?
Dex Polizzi, Polizzi, Verona, New Jersey. For the planner, when were you retained by the applicant?
I believe it was in September.
Okay. I just want to confirm, was there ever a certificate of occupancy issued for an assembly use?
The CO itself, I don't think specified the use. The zoning permit that was originally approved was submitted as an event space, and that change of use was also identified as an event space on that approval, the change of use approval by the zoning officer.
Which was submitted when?
I believe that was March of 23.
What's the rationale for seeking a variance roughly a year and a half after operating without authorization?
So
That's beyond,
That's beyond the scope of.
Okay, I apologize. You also mentioned that when alcohol was served on site, that there was supposed to be a licensed bartender. Who was the licensed bartender on the night of March 15th?
He would not know that one either.
No,
And he
okay.
did not say anything about that here, other than
Oh, it was just part
general
of this.
requirement.
Understood. Am I allowed to ask about noise, or is that part of another conversation?
Did he mention noise?
Briefly, he did. Yeah?
You can ask about the insulation.
Yeah, so you mentioned that there's never been a professional noise or acoustic study, is that correct?
I'm not aware.
Okay.
I'm not aware if they were ever conducted those studies.
Can you confirm any sort of processes or procedures or anything done to maintain compliance with Verona's ordinances with regard to noise, hours of operation?
So there is a noise code. Based on conversations with the client, I believe there were noise complaints at times while this business was operating for, again, it was over a year and a half. So when those noise complaints did go through to the police department, I believe the police department came out to the site, spoke with the owners. I don't believe they ever were issued a citation for any noise.
Were the owners on site every time a noise complaint was issued?
I'm not aware.
who's responsible for monitoring the noise before it gets to the point of being out of compliance with the ordinances?
So it's my understanding one of the two owners are always on site during an event. They have cameras throughout the facility, so they are monitoring that. And, you know, if people are outside or doors open, they do monitor. The front ballroom has speakers in place, so that's a little more of a controlled environment where they could set the noise level. The back ballroom generally has either a DJ or potentially live music. So, you know, to the extent monitoring, I think it's going outside and making sure you can't hear through their sound, but through operating, I think they we're trying to minimize noise impacts.
Right. So if these were monitored, why does the record show, based on the chief of police testimony, the persistent and willful neglect of such limits and ordinances?
I'm not familiar with what you're referring to.
There's been no testimony presented.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was included in the case documents, the written, I guess it's an email from Chief Kiernan.
The departmental reviews.
Yeah, sorry. Wrong words. My apologies. I think that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Polizzi. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to ask a question at this time? If not, counsel, I would turn it back to you.
Just as a preliminary, did you review the application and the surrounding area to determine the permitted use, other permitted uses in the area, whether they essentially mirrored my client's use?
Yeah, so part of my review was a site visit, identifying other businesses along this corridor, which there are a variety. It is a mixed-use area. So I think there are similar uses in the zone.
Would one of them be the Richfield Regency?
Correct.
That is a major event place that actually has a liquor license.
I'm not aware if it has a liquor license, but it's an event space.
That would be one way down Bloomfield Avenue. And I'm aware there may be separate zoning lines. I'm aware of that. But within the general proximity of my client's business, there is the Richfield Regency, correct? And then the other direction, there's another event place as well?
Correct. Across Bloomfield Avenue, there's an event space. I have the name here. La Bella Princess Cafe, that's at the opposite corner of Bloomfield Avenue and Lakeside Avenue. I believe they host events as
And
well.
then there's another one down the street as well. You may not know the name of it, but it's there, correct?
Yeah, I did observe a restaurant that was at least advertising for party rentals as well. I don't think that was the sole event rental space. I think it's a restaurant with that added component, but similar, I would say, in use.
And you're aware of the positive and negative criteria that my client has to follow?
Correct.
And all right, can you give your opinion on those?
So with the D1 use variance, under the municipal land use law, it's special reasons, predominantly that the site is particularly well suited for this specific use, and the purposes of the municipal land use law would be advanced. That's the positive prong. The negative prong is that there's no substantial detriment to the general welfare and no substantial impairment to the zone plan or zoning ordinance. Based on my review and through the site visit and review of the plans and walking the surrounding area, I do find this site to be particularly well suited for this use. The property itself, around 9,000 square feet in total, is substantially larger than the minimum lot size in the TC zone of 2,000 square feet. With that, there's also an existing building on the site. Walking into the space, the front ballroom really appears as a storefront as you're walking by. It's a smaller space that could hold more intimate events. Walking into the ballroom, bigger ballroom in the back, I was surprised with the size of it. There's large ceilings, probably 20 feet plus, and it's a large room. And really, when you walk in, it feels like it's an event space. It feels like that's what that space is for. So having an existing building on a larger site, I think, did lend itself to this type of use. The applicant here, obviously, in part of their due diligence, did identify properties, and this is one that they felt fit what they wanted to do on the property. It fit the size of events that they want to have and really fit their business model. So I think with the space itself and then with the direct access to municipal parking, many of the properties along this TC corridor on Bloomfield Avenue don't have direct parking, at least for this size of building. So I think having that direct access where you don't have to walk across major roadways really is another positive of this application. In addition to the lot size and the building size itself, really identifying and seeing how this type of use would fit in along this Bloomfield Avenue corridor, which, as I mentioned, is a true mixed-use downtown center. You have restaurants, you have office buildings, you have barber shops, bars, other event spaces. So I think there is a variety of uses. The applicant here, again, doesn't serve food on the site, but through the meetings with the prospective renters of the event spaces would provide recommendations for caterers, predominantly local caterers, also on Bloomfield Avenue, who they would recommend for catering these types of events. So I think it's a true local business helping other local businesses, which really at the heart of it is what a good downtown space would have. So with respect to that, I do think this use does fit in with this corridor. I also reviewed the zoning, so we spoke a little bit about.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I ask a quick question about that? In your professional opinion, so restaurants are permitted uses here. So what is the difference between a restaurant and an event space?
So restaurants generally are seated. You have a waiter come up to the table, serve food. They're cooking on site. Event space, it's really kind of a host of the space itself. So it provides the bones, and then it brings in renters to host private parties through a contract. So I definitely wouldn't classify this as a restaurant. It's not open to the public. They're private events that are through a contract after meeting with the applicant, the owners, the lessees of this space. It's private events. You're inviting friends and family to those events. It's not open to the public. Not anyone can just walk into the space. I think that's really the major difference between a restaurant and an event space.
But the similarities would be essentially have people coming in, sitting down, gathering, and eating and leaving.
I think an event space is a little more involved. You have usually live music, DJs, or other entertainment. You have dancing. It's not predominantly just sit down, eat, and leave. Obviously it's an event, so people are gathering and enjoying the space and enjoying being around people essentially that they invited.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarification. That's kind of self-serving interest there. And how many people did you say could be supported in that venue? Upwards of?
It's 151 people is the occupancy in the back, so they don't always reach that full occupancy. It's usually it's always less than that, but it's usually not at the max, I would say. And then the front ballroom is 64 people by occupancy.
Gotcha. And so even similar, not similar, all the other permitted uses that are not required to have parking requirements, restaurants and all the other retail stores in that area, currently capped at about 100 patrons in terms of their capacity. So you're doubling the requirement for permitted parking use in that area is what we're saying.
Yeah, I would say that's
without the parking expectation. So the same expectation for not having parking, but double the capacity.
Yeah, and I would say that's also reflective of the size of the space alone, right? It's those are the occupancy numbers because how large the space is, how large this existing building is. So it's reflective of that. Many of the other storefronts, I think, are smaller properties. So in tune, they have lesser occupancy, lesser parking requirements. I think that's reflective.
But I think one major distinction is that in an event space case, the occupants come and go at the same time. There's one giant load instead of trickling.
Absolutely, yes.
One of the criteria for approval of the variance is hardship on the applicant, correct? Is that a criteria that could be considered if it's denied?
Yeah, I would not classify this as a hardship criteria.
You mentioned the Richfield Regency as comparable. How many parking spots are on site at the Richfield?
So this is the aerial exhibit labeled A3. Again, you can see the property outlined in red here. The Richfield is down here along Bloomfield, further along Bloomfield Avenue. There's probably about 20 spaces or so, it looks like, from the aerial.
When you walked the area, did you walk to the Richfield?
No, I did not walk all the way down that way.
So the 20 is the estimate just by looking at that aerial view?
Correct.
Are you aware that the Richfield also has an auxiliary lot right across the street?
I'm not, no.
Are you aware that they use valet for their events as well?
Nope.
The La Bella Princess Cafe that you mentioned, do you know what the square footage of that is?
I don't know so that's on the opposite corner here, southwest of the site. It's certainly a much smaller footprint. It actually looks akin to the front ballroom space, I would say, which is less than 1,000 square feet.
Okay. And do you know the name of the other third comparable that you provided?
So again, it appeared as a restaurant. It was just advertising as I walked past for rental space. That was Sabor de Mi Tierra Verona. And just going back to the comparison purposes, so I was really trying to compare it from a use standpoint. Certainly, the Richfield is a larger facility, has parking. Those aren't direct comparisons. It is more just this corridor does have a variety of spaces. Parking is certainly an aspect of how this site has to operate. If there's not parking, guests are driving around all night. How are they getting to the event? How does it work? I think those considerations the applicant did take, and having a municipal lot, I think, was part of what likely attracted them to this site. But given that the building itself that's existing on the property does take up a majority of the space, parking's limited. So that's part of the aspect of this application. So just from a zoning standpoint, the TC zone does really what you're seeing along Bloomfield Avenue account for most of the frontage on Bloomfield Avenue. Beyond that, so further to the east, further to the east, it gets into the extended town zone. That's where we get into the permitted use, which was on-site catering or off-site catering. Again, I think that's a little more reflective of what this event space is, which is permitted in those extended town center zone. That zone also has a larger lot size requirement of 9,000 square feet and is reflective of larger lots that likely have more on-site availability for on-site parking rather than your more densely populated town center zone, which this property is located in. I did have a couple other points I want to make. So in reviewing the township master plan, it did have specific language of recommendations. Part of that is consolidating use group requirements. So rather than have very specific use groups, which the zoning code currently has, it's really broadening up those terms. While they stay the same, retail sales and retail services, it broadens up the umbrella. So I did, see that in the master plan and think that's a direct result really of why this application's here, right? Because it's not a specific use that's defined. So a more broader land use group may have captured it, where the current zoning has more specific uses, which obviously does not. So I did find that reflective. Generally, I think the master plan identifies this corridor for commercial type uses, so I think it is consistent from that aspect with the intent of the zone plan. As far as the negative criteria goes, I don't see a substantial impairment. I think it is consistent with other commercial uses along the zone, is consistent with the vision of the town center's zone and the master plan with that. I did want to reference the purposes of the municipal land use law that I find this project does advance. I do think it's an appropriate use and development of the property. So I got into some of the site suitability aspects of it. The lot size, the size of the building itself lends it to this event space type use, as well as the consistency with really this mixed use corridor along Bloomfield Avenue. So I do think it's an appropriate use and development of the site consistent with purpose A. I also find that the site provides sufficient space and appropriate location for this event space. I think that the building itself that's existing and is being utilized is appropriately sized for an event space. I think the relationship to a municipal parking lot does provide parking for attendees of the event. As far as some goals of the master plan that I think this project also advances, it recognizes to promote growth in appropriate areas that meet current and future land use trends. I think event spaces are a needed use. Not everyone could host a birthday party or a communion party or whatever event at their home. So I think having a third-party event space is an emerging trend, or is a continued trend that people look for. And as I said, I do think it fits in with this avenue, Bloomfield Avenue corridor. Moving into the other prong of the negative criteria, I don't see a substantial detriment to the general welfare here. As I said, the site is monitored by the owners during events through the security cameras that go directly to their phones. They don't serve directly liquor, and they require renters to have a licensed bartender when beer, liquor, and wine is served on the site. They do bring in a cleaning crew after the events, so those that takes place the day after an event, and generally the events are held from Friday evening through Sunday midday. I think just at this point, to summarize, I do find that the site is particularly well suited and does meet the special reasons. I don't find any substantial detriment to the general welfare here, and I don't see any substantial impairment to the zone plan or zoning ordinance. I'll ask Mr. Palma if he has any follow-up questions for me to address on direct.
No, not at this time.
So with that, I would open myself up to the board for questions.
In your review of the master plan, did you see anything in the town center that said that one of the goals was to increase residential by eliminating the 50% rule that we now have for commercial, residential, and mixed-use properties?
Yes, that was one of the recommendations of the master plan.
You mentioned the requirement of the licensed bartender. Is that a regulatory requirement, or is that done through the owner of the building or the owner of basically the tenant?
Yeah, it's my understanding the operator of Palmetto Ventures requires that as part of their contract. I don't believe it's a municipal or state requirement. I think that's part of their due diligence when they're touring the site with prospective renters. And, to the extent that as an operator to have a business that flourishes, you want to minimize, minimize issues on a property, and certainly, the serving of alcohol can lead to issues. I think that's part of their due diligence and reasoning for requiring a licensed bartender who then can monitor the service of alcohol. And if there isn't a licensed bartender, then the renters aren't allowed to bring alcohol on the premises.
Are you aware that there was a similar application probably about a month ago? Were you privy to the fact that, you could watch this all on YouTube, but we as a board have some major concerns about the site and traffic and, the fact that Park Place is a dead end, et cetera, because this all came out somewhat recently. And we would have loved to have heard other testimony regarding the specific use to, the timing and whatnot related to parking and related to the traffic flow on Bloomfield Avenue.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that application. My review was really just to the extent that I was able to walk and visually see businesses that are operating. I understand the board's concerns from a traffic standpoint, from an operational standpoint of circulation as well. The first time I went to the site, it was tricky coming out of Lakeside and figuring how you get across. So I definitely see there being concern. As I said, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I can't testify that, but I could discuss with our team to see if that's something we would be willing to pull back and get a traffic study done.
But I guess, I still can't get over it. Aren't mixed-use facilities subject to parking requirements and parking based on utilization of the facility? Even in that zone, isn't it? Even in the town center zone, once it's a mixed-use facility, then it's still subject to 150, whatever, and then based on the load of mixed use, even in the town center. Isn't that how it's? Can we review that? Isn't that?
There's no parking requirements in the town center zone.
Okay, because as I read it, a conditional use.
This would not be a conditional use. Conditional uses are uses that,
But as a mixed-use facility, wouldn't that become a conditional use at that point?
no,
Okay.
no. If there is a conditional use, then there could be parking requirements with that conditional use. So that's probably what you're referring to. This is not a conditional use because the use itself is not permitted. A conditional use would be these uses are permitted provided that,
Okay.
and they would have to meet those conditions. So that does not apply here.
Okay.
But if we feel that the amount of people in this space exceeds what the original intent of the use was for this space, we could make parking in.
That certainly goes to site suitability, and the overall positive and also the negative criteria. If you believe parking will be a problem, and there has been no traffic testimony, but if you believe that parking will be a problem, and you certainly can rely on knowledge that you already have, and that's one of the reasons a board is made up of local residents, is because you sometimes rely on your local knowledge. That certainly is a factor in the criteria, whether it be the positive or the negative criteria.
Yeah, I think one of the important pieces of this zoning approval letter from August 10th in 2023 is that it says that the owner applicant should be aware that any future change may require formal application to the Verona Board of Adjustment for variance. This was released August 10th of 2023. The architectural plans came out in October of 2023. So in my mind, the occupant load was not established at the time of the zoning permit.
Well, I
Because
think.
you couldn't have done that analysis without going through the architectural process.
That's certainly true. The applicant is here for a variance. So the applicant, whatever brought the applicant here is really not relevant, but they are here for a variance. So it's certainly something that you could take into consideration. But again, the board has to take into consideration the zoning criteria, the positive and negative criteria, not the historical aspect of something like that you just mentioned, like the load and whatever. They are here. Now, that certainly could be a condition that you could impose, but we are here tonight for the use, and they have complied with the terms of that letter from that issue because they're here.
Mr. Palma, has your witness covered everything that he needed to? I noted in your letter, you had a comment about the signage. Did that come through in time to be considered as part of this application?
I believe the sign issue was ivy and the sign, I thought that was rectified. I thought the sign was removed and the ivy was taken down. I mean, if that's an issue, my client could deal with the sign and the ivy. We're not looking to change anything.
Just, your witness didn't mention anything
Right.
about that.
There were, excuse me, the sign on the side of the building was approved, but then there was ivy added around it, which becomes part of the sign. So the ivy, from what I understand, has been removed.
Okay.
There was a third sign, though, that was in the back, the rear of the building, that was never permitted. And I believe that sign has been removed now as
Exactly.
well.
That was just right, exactly.
Okay, so you're not seeking a variance with the signage, you'll comply with all the town ordinances.
Right.
Okay. And while we talked about the windows in your letter, it says that it should be deemed as an exception since the applicants are not serving their own alcoholic beverages. That would seem to be a building code, not necessarily a zoning.
I think that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
But, I mean, we don't want the space to look like it's vacant, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm just going by what we made
The place
ATM,
across the street.
right, redesigned so that they didn't block out the windows. We wanted the windows to be open so that it didn't look like the place was closed down and you were disadvantaging tenants on either side of you.
We
But
do
that
have
was-
an ordinance to that effect, right?
I believe you said you could see sunlight through it. My experience when I had been there, that it was quite opaque, that you really could not see through it. And I think that it was mentioned through fire and safety that there was, and the alcohol part of it. But we do not have anything, the way signage works, right? You can't cover more than 25% of the window with signage. Film on the window is not considered a sign because there's no lettering at all on it. So that's why the entire window could be covered.
But isn't it part of the master plan that the first floor should be integrated into the street?
Right, but it does not specifically call that out in the zoning code. That you
But it
can't
might be
have
master
it.
plan.
Right.
Just to clarify, so the film on the windows, definitely black out. Like, you can't see through, you can see out, and it blocks all the sunlight. That was the intent, because you could see even on image figure 3, when the doors open, just the sunlight coming through that doorway. It's intense. It certainly wasn't the applicant's intent to make the space look vacant or unattractive, and I certainly think that they would be willing to work with the board professionals to find a different remedy if this application were to be approved.
I concur, and that's the least of our issues, is removing that film and putting a lighter film on it. Again, it wasn't done to circumvent any rules or regulations. It's just not to have light blinding people while they're trying to have a party at certain hours of the day. I mean, that's all it was. Plus, there's the energy aspect. In the summer, you have strong sunlight coming in, you have to use more air conditioning, which is more electricity. But if the code officer says, if this is, I'm just making up numbers now, 80% dark and it's got to be 40 or 50, my client would be happy to do that.
Are there any other questions from the board members for our professional planner? Seeing none. Are there any questions from the public for our professional planner on the testimony that he's just concluded?
Emily Polizzi, Polizzi, Park Place. Mr. Bellamy, in the testimony you just gave, you stated this is a true local business helping other local businesses. Could you please share which local businesses have been helped by Palmetto Venues?
I'm not aware of the specifics. Through conversations with my clients, they said they recommended other caterers who are located along Bloomfield Avenue.
Okay. You said you think that it's part of the owner's due diligence to have a licensed bartender serving at events. Could you attest that a licensed bartender was present at all events hosted at Palmetto Venues up until, before and up until the event the evening of March 15th?
That's really not relevant for this land use.
Oh, you stated that, that's why.
It's in their contract.
Okay.
That they offer to renters. That's the extent that I know, and really that's relevant since we're seeking a use variance.
Okay, well, you had just said that you thought it was part of their due diligence, which is why I was asking the question, because it was in your testimony.
Yeah, due diligence as is, it's in the contracts.
Okay, so can't confirmed. You also stated that you don't see a substantial detriment to the general welfare, and that the owner monitors the security cameras, I don't know if that's on site or remotely, during events. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? Because I think I'm, as a resident of Park Place, a neighbor of that address, that space, I do see a substantial detriment. So I'm wondering if you could elaborate how the owner monitoring the security cameras is somehow negating that there's, now there's no substantial detriment. I just want to elaborate a little bit about that. We've talked about the noise a little bit. People have brought up parking, et cetera. The serving of alcohol, unsure about the bartender or not. Just wondering. No substantial detriment to the general welfare, but please elaborate.
Yeah, so there's many components to that I think I touched on throughout my testimony. From a business itself and from the type of use this is in, I do think it's consistent with this corridor. From a direct safety standpoint, I think having security cameras throughout the site and having someone monitor that does provide some safety aspect within the facility. There's also lights on the entrances. So that I think from a security standpoint within the facility, I think the operators do try to monitor and also throughout their contracts and due diligence, I think try to monitor the clientele and they want to see their business succeed, which is, having good renters and utilization of the space itself.
So would you say that monitoring the security cameras and monitoring said security cameras has been sufficient security up until the point that Palmetto Venues was no longer permitted to operate? That was sufficient monitoring the cameras?
Again, I don't think that's really relevant for this procedure.
Oh, I think it is. You just stated that, and that's why I'm only speaking to what you've stated, sir.
So, and this is, it's definitely backwards from a land use perspective, right?
Yeah.
You had a zoning permit issued, you have a CO, building permits issued. 2 years later, that was retracted.
Sure.
So generally, when you're seeking a use variance, that's, I guess, the second step of the process. First step would be to get a zoning denial. Second step would be to submit to the zoning board for a D1 use variance. So generally, when you're seeking these variances, you don't know how a site's going to operate. You don't know really the ins and outs of it. So from my testimony, my perspective is the measures that they have in place and plan to continue to have in place if this were to be approved. I think that's the testimony for the board to consider. Any specific events, I don't have knowledge, direct knowledge of how they go or really, how it's operation. It's really just the plan and what they plan to have within the site. And I think that's what's for the board to consider.
Okay, and just to clarify again, you were retained by the applicant, you said in September?
I
So
believe
last month?
September or August, yeah, it's the last couple,
Okay.
within a couple of months.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Polizzi.
Sharon O'Donnell, Park Place. You had stated earlier that it was your judgment, assessment, that the applicant was well-suited for the location, and that the applicant was consistent with other businesses in the area. So two businesses that come to mind for me is, of course, the Bella Princess Cafe on the other side of Bloomfield Avenue, and the Avenue Bistro, which is right in that same lineup. Do you know the operating hours of either of those two businesses?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, for Bella Princess Cafe, according to their website, which I think is the best thing we can go by, when a potential client is setting up their request.
Ms. O'Donnell, please ask questions, do not testify.
Sure. So you're unaware of their hours. Okay. Are you then also unaware of their peak hours in terms of flow, comings and goings?
No, I'm not.
Okay. No further questions.
Thank you.
Dex Polizzi, Verona. You reference restaurants and other event spaces that operate in Verona, specifically the Richfield Regency. What kind of oversight does a institution that's licensed to serve alcohol, what kind of oversight do they are they subject to?
So I think a point of clarification from the last couple of questions. Referencing these properties are from a use perspective. Operations are different. It's not an apples to apples comparison, and that certainly wasn't my intent. My reference to other event type spaces was just these types of uses are along this corridor and along with a variety of other uses. So that was really, my point of testimony, not so this is how they operate, this is how we operate, this is here, so this is why this should be here. That certainly wasn't my intent. It's reviewing the zoning, reviewing the uses, and reviewing the corridor from a zoning and planning and zoning perspective, and seeing that consistency and synergy between uses along a mixed-use corridor.
So then would you agree that one of the conditions of the uses for a place like the Ridgefield Regency is that they have an alcohol license and that they're regulated by the state ABC?
Yeah, so those are business and state licensing, municipal licensing requirements. Again, I don't think that's directly tied to a use variance application. any business that would operate in the space has to comply with building code and licensing requirements. So that's regulated at a different level and a different authority. And, you know, from a pure use standpoint, again, I just don't think that's really relevant for the use variance argument.
So I apologize if this question is naive, but why should an event venue that may or may not serve alcohol like Palmetto venues operate without the same level of oversight?
That's a matter of the law.
That's a involved question for legals.
I'm sorry?
That would be an involved question for the lawyers, not necessarily for a professional planner.
Will there be an opportunity in this testimony to have those questions answered? Otherwise?
Counsel?
I would just submit, if an establishment has a liquor license, they're subject to the requirements or rules and regulations of the Alcohol Beverage Commission of the state and municipality. If you do not have a liquor license, you are not serving alcohol, you are not subject to those boards or those requirements. It is kind of that simple.
So then, in your opinion, it's fair game for a place like Palmetto Venues to serve alcohol without oversight?
They do not serve alcohol.
Then what can we attribute the overconsumption of alcohol experienced by their attendees? What can be?
We would prefer not to have counsel testify.
That's fine.
Well, I
Who
would
can
object to
answer
that
these?
question. There's no proof there's been overconsumption of my client's establishment.
That's a whole different
Okay.
court case.
The owner operator will be the next witness, so you could ask how they are operating the business.
All right, thank you, and I appreciate your understanding here. Thank you.
Good evening, Thomas Monroe, Verona, New Jersey. Good evening. Did you review the lease as part of this application?
Briefly, I skimmed over it. I wouldn't say extensively,
Did the
no.
lease contain the hours of operation?
From my review, I don't think so, no.
Do you know what's the latest an event can last at the Palmetto venue?
I believe it's around 12 p.m. is when most events would.
What controls that? Is it the lease? Is it a municipal ordinance? Do you know?
So that would be the Palmetto Ventures through their contracts and that they issue to who's ever renting out the
I believe
space.
my client can answer that question for you.
Okay. So do you, as a planner, have you seen an event space defined in other municipal codes?
Yeah, I think there are codes that at least have a term that broadly captures
Can you give us an example or what your recollection of that term might include?
a banquet hall.
Is the Palmetto venues a banquet hall in your view?
I think it fits under that definition. And I did, again, I reviewed the zoning definitions within the township ordinance. Didn't find that. There's a book of development definitions that I searched for a variety of uses. Banquet facilities defined as an establishment that provides food prepared and served in a formal setting for special occasions such as weddings, bar bat mitzvahs, family reunions, corporate award ceremonies, etc.
Are you aware of a recent application for a variance from another potential tenant at this location?
No, I'm not.
Did you have any conversations with the landlord related to this application?
No, I did not.
Have you ever met with the landlord?
Nope.
Does a use variance, if it were one to be granted, it would benefit the landlord?
I would just say I do this frequently. Generally, meeting with a landlord or a property owner isn't involved with an application. They do have to sign off on any use variance, so they're the owner of the property. They have to sign off on the submittal of an application as well as the operator, Palmetto Ventures. So they are aware of it, and I think did sign a lease to have an event space operating within their building.
So the landlord does benefit by use variance?
Yeah, they would be able to rent out the space.
Is the landlord here tonight?
I couldn't even tell you that.
They weren't here at the last application either. So, are you qualified to testify as to security provided at an event space?
I think my testimony that I put on the record would be the extent that I could testify
What
to.
qualifications do you have to discuss present to the board as to security at an event space?
I provided the facts.
Excuse me, our client is not put forth as a security expert. He's a licensed planner.
Right.
I don't recall much testimony on security.
His testimony as to security related to the presence of the owners, their observations of the video cameras. So what else? Do you have any other testimony as to security during an event?
That's the extent of my knowledge of the security in place.
You have no other qualifications as to security?
I'm going to object at this point. I think it's being argumentative.
Yes. His qualifications were approved as a professional planner,
Right, not security.
not security.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Monroe. Is there anyone else from the public who would have a question? Seeing none? Counselor?
Yes.
Can you give the board your name, please?
Nancy Lewis.
Can you spell your last name, please?
NANCYLOUIS.
Ms. Lewis, can you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes,
Thank you.
Okay. You're married, Ms. Lewis, correct?
yes.
And what is your husband's name?
Robert Lewis.
Rob, you have to keep your voice up a little bit.
Robert Lewis.
Okay. Do you, can you, by your personal profession, tell me the limit of your education?
Oh, I have a PhD. I work in healthcare in the
What is
cancer
your
center.
PhD
In cancer research.
in? And go on. I didn't mean to cut you
Oh,
off.
that's
Go ahead.
okay. I've been working in healthcare for over 20 years. And I also, for about 25 years, have been an event planner, which is a passion of mine, and a wedding planner.
So over these 25 years, safe to say you've planned and participated in hundreds of events?
Yes,
Wedding, I mean, the whole gamut of events? Is that
Correct.
correct to say?
yes,
So did there come a point in time when you desired to have your own event location?
yes,
Instead of planning them at other locations, you wanted to have your own?
absolutely.
So you went through an extensive search, I presume?
Yes,
And finally, you centered on this location.
correct.
Why did you pick this location?
The space was ideal. It was in a nice town, such as Verona. It provided ample space for nice events. It did have the municipal parking lot.
You have a rough idea how
available.
many spaces are in that lot?
Can guess maybe about 60.
Okay, good. So you saw parking, a nice town, central location. Anything else? What town do you live in?
In West Orange.
All right, so you live in the adjoining town, so this was a convenient location, it was close.
Correct.
Okay. So, once you saw this place for rent and you liked the location, as you just said, what did you do next?
So once we identified the location, we checked with the town and asked for guidance as far as how we can get approved to use the space. We submitted an application.
Who did you
and-
submit that application to? Which department, do you recall?
To ask my husband.
The one that you were told to, I guess?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
Yes, so we submitted the application to request permission. Everything was disclosed as to the intent of the use. And we followed all the steps that were required. And in March, I believe, of 2023, we were approved.
All right. Now, I'll jump ahead. Did you make, in your renovations, did you change the outside footprint of the building at all?
No,
Change any entrances or exits at all?
no,
Any windows at all, add or take any away?
no,
Now, when you made this application, you disclosed what the use was going to be, correct?
correct.
And from when you originally disclosed the use and received your, I believe it was March of '23, approval for an event space, to your final plans of the renovations, did anything change inside the building other than renovations?
No,
Any change in the use at all?
no,
Any change in the footprint of the interior?
no.
Right. So after you received your approval in March of '23 for an event space, what did you do next?
So after we received the approval, we went and applied for a loan because there was major renovation needed. We was fortunate to secure a $250,000 loan to do the renovation, which is what it cost us to do the renovation of the property.
Did you hire a general contractor?
Yes, we hired contractors and they obtained the appropriate permits needed for them to be able to do the work.
And am I correct in presuming you received your general contractor permits?
Correct.
Then there was plumbing and electrical work to be done,
Correct,
and all those permits were given?
correct,
And all the approvals, your green seals as they call it, for each one was given?
correct,
And then you received your final CO?
correct.
And then from when you received your final CO, do you remember roughly when that was?
I want to say March
Of '24?
24.
All right. So when you received your zoning approval in March of '23, and you received your final CO, which allowed use in March of '24, did anything change regarding what your use would be?
No,
Any change, again, in the footprint of the inside change?
no,
Now, we know there's a front room and a back room.
correct,
Now, the front room is, I believe there's 64 occupancy. And again, you didn't change the footprint of that room.
no,
And there's a bathroom specifically for that room?
correct,
And that was already there, the bathroom?
correct. We just renovated it.
You just renovated the bathroom. Was there a kitchenette area in that room?
Yes, there was,
And you simply renovated it?
correct.
The back room, which I believe is an occupancy of 151, there's more than one bathroom back there?
There's 2 bathrooms there.
Were they there already?
Yes,
You just renovated?
correct,
And there's a kitchenette area?
yes,
Right. Now, what's inside each kitchenette? Is it essentially the same in both?
correct. Just the refrigerator, microwave, and a sink.
That's it?
That's it.
Any stoves?
No,
Any ovens?
no,
No range tops, anything of that nature?
no,
So other than storing maybe a cake and deviled eggs in the refrigerator and people setting up their trays with the burners like everybody does, there's no way to really prepare food there.
no,
You don't have all utensils, pots and pans or anything like that?
no.
Okay. Now, you obtained the lease, obviously, with the landlord.
Yes.
Other than the normal lease terms, length of the lease, amount of rent, any CAM charges, things, other than that, anything specific that the landlord required from you for this event space?
No,
When you decided to pick this location, did you look at the general area as well?
absolutely.
And did you see that there were other type restaurants, catering halls, things of that nature?
Yes, there was restaurants, there's an event space not too far that's called 340 Bloom, which is very similar to the space that we have in which we actually visited before.
And that's a pure event space?
Yes,
All right, and then there's a restaurant that has a party room as well.
correct,
And we all know the Richfield is there, and there's another location across the street.
correct.
Now, from when you start operation in March of '24, let's just go to the end of February of '25. About roughly how many events did you have?
We had events pretty much every weekend, so I would say maybe 80 to 100, maybe.
All right, approximately 80 to 100. Now, we've heard testimony from the planner about a bartender. Was that required in any way by the town?
No,
Was that required in any way by the landlord?
no,
Did anybody, police, fire, anybody, require you to do that?
no. We decided to do that on our own to protect our business and to keep the visitors or the attendees of the event space, safe, to make sure that no one, drank too much, to make sure that everybody was safe, because it would be on the bartender's license.
Right, and that's why you required a licensed bartender,
Correct,
where if he served somebody who was inebriated, he would lose his license and his
Correct.
livelihood.
correct.
So he had skin in the game, as they say.
Yes.
Okay, all right. How this window film, this tinning, whatever it is on, did you install that or was that there?
No, we installed it, and we installed it because when we had events, it was extremely hot in the room. Even though the air conditioner was on, clients would complain that it was hot. So we had to, initially we had blinds there, like white blinds that you can pull up and down. That was the initial covering of the windows. But then at one point, we realized that we had to do something more. That's the first reason. The second reason is a lot of clients that came in, they wanted privacy. They didn't want their event exposed to the street.
Okay. But if the board requires a different level of tinning, you'd be obviously willing to comply with that.
Absolutely.
All right. I presume some sort of insulation per code was put in around the exterior walls when you did your renovations, as the code required?
Yes, I'm not sure if I understand your question, sorry.
There's insulation, every house.
Yes,
every-
yes,
Right.
absolutely.
And whatever the code required, that insulation was given.
Correct,
Now, I know you're not an acoustical engineer, but you're aware that insulation does provide some sort of soundproof.
correct. But we were not advised, again, that's not my specialty. We didn't even think about having soundproof or installation or anything like that. But had we been told, of course, we would have done it because we complied with everything else that was told to us.
Did anybody in the town suggest you do an acoustical study of the property?
No.
What are the normal hours of your event?
Oh, it varies. It can be at any time. However, what I can tell you is, per contract, we are aware that the ordinance for the town, actually, to be fair and transparent, initially, we were not sure of what time to end the parties. And the contract was at 12 o'clock, like that was the ending time. And then at one point, we learned that it was 11 o'clock. So we changed the contract to reflect 11 o'clock as the ending time. However, that's the time where the music would stop, right? So that's the time where people would start vacating the property.
Okay. Now, people would park if they found one on the street or in the municipal lot.
Correct,
Now, either you and your husband would be there for every event.
absolutely.
Safe to say you kind of took turns during.
Correct. Initially, at the beginning of the event, both of us are always there. And the reason for that is because we were aware that there were some complaints regarding parking, because sometimes, the clients would come in the wrong parking space. So one of us would be outside to direct parking, and the other one would be inside, to assist. And at one point when, all the clients were there, then one of us may continue to stay or one of us may leave.
All right. Now, were there any problems where people could not find the parking space?
Yeah, there are times people got lost and confused.
Not
And-
lost, I mean, if they found their way to the municipal lot, was there always spaces?
Oh, yes, yes.
So, once they found the location, maybe they're coming from far, but once they found your location and found the municipal lot, did you ever see a problem where there was no parking spaces?
No, not that I'm aware of.
All right.
But-
Now, during these 80 to 100 events from March of 24 to end of February of 25, was there ever one time, an incident inside your establishment where there was a fight?
Never.
One time where the police had to be called because of an incident inside your facility?
Never.
Was there ever an incident immediately outside your facility? A
No.
fight, a severe argument, anything that the police had to come because of a disturbance?
Never.
Can you
Now-
define immediately? Because in the department reviews, it seems like there was numerous.
Well, I didn't get to noise yet. I'm talking fights or things of that nature.
Okay, can you define the immediate area?
When I say immediate, I mean on the sidewalk in front of your facility.
No, as far as I'm concerned, there was never any fights, never any issues at all. And if there were, we would have called the police.
You yourself would have called.
Absolutely.
Now, regarding noise,
Mhm.
was there any ever noise complaints?
So initially, again, maybe it was our ignorance and full transparency. We did get a first complaint of noise where one of the neighbors called the police and stated that it was too loud. At that point, the neighbor actually ended up telling us, and we built a relationship, and we had a better understanding of how the impact of the noise in that space. So at that point, we made some adjustments. For example, we made sure the loudspeakers were not in the front room because that's where it impacted them the most. So we made some adjustments. After that, there were, I would say, probably 5 times where, well, including that, 5 times total, where the police did come to the venue to state that the music was loud. And we would go outside with the police officer who verified that they did not hear the music outside, and we were not issued a citation. But we did, respect the fact that there were complaints, and we did adjust the volume of the music.
And after those initial issues, were there any other problems with the noise?
Not that I'm aware of.
Now, you have security cameras inside the facility?
Yes.
For both ballrooms?
Yes.
Are they monitored by you and/or your husband?
Yes.
At all times?
Yes.
And if you saw something start to develop, you would have addressed it?
Absolutely.
Did you ever have to?
Never.
Now, people would bring food in, their own.
Yes.
There's no preparation on site.
No.
Would you, during your discussions with potential customers, would they ask your opinion at times where to get catering from?
Yes.
And what would you say?
So we had agreements with Frank Anthony. We had agreements with Avenue Bistro, and I forgot their name, but they're directly to the right of Palmetto Venues, and they've catered multiple times at the venue, including Frank Anthony's.
And so these are 3 establishments right on Bloomfield Avenue in Verona.
Correct.
And again, regarding alcohol, you don't store alcohol there?
No, we don't store it. We don't serve it.
If people choose to, you tell them in advance, you need to know.
Correct.
If somebody tells you at first, nope, we're not going to have liquor, and obviously they don't have a bartender, and you see them showing up with alcohol, what do you do?
They're in violation of the contract, so they would not have access to the property.
Or they just couldn't serve alcohol that night?
Right.
Okay. Do you have any direct control over the municipal parking lot?
No.
However, if you saw something developing there, you would call the police?
Absolutely.
When you made your application to the town, did the town say anything to you about somehow requiring a special number of parking spaces?
No.
All right, I have no further questions. Oh, wait, one more. If you were told initially, when you applied, that you had to come before this board for a variance, would you have done so?
Absolutely. Everything we were told to do, we did.
And if you did not receive the approval, would you have spent $250,000 on this property?
Absolutely not. We still have to pay for this loan till this day.
Right, you're still paying for this loan?
Absolutely.
And you're still paying rent?
Yes, I am.
No further questions.
Counselor, can we clarify? I keep hearing March of '23 and March of '24. The letter I have from the township providing the zoning approval is dated August.
I'm sorry. Maybe I misspoke. It's August, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Chairman,
March is when
I
we
can
had.
clarify, the zoning application was submitted on August 2nd, 2023, and the zoning approval from Philip Epps was August 10th, 2023.
What
Just wanted to
happened
get
in,
the-
in
I apologize for that.
March was the ribbon cutting ceremony, so that's why. we did it.
I have another question, Counselor. As happy as I am to hear from Ms. Lewis, I see Ms. Lewis's name on none of these papers.
So,
I just want to make sure that Ms. Lewis is up to speed on 600 pages of paperwork, and she's the silent partner and person behind the business.
What is the name of the business?
Palmetto Venues.
Who owns the business?
My husband primarily, and I'm the behind the scenes person.
Are you familiar with it?
Yes,
You're the spokesperson?
yes.
We're just clarifying the record here. The affidavit of service indicates a address in Livingston.
That is the P.O. box.
Oh, okay. 49 West Mount.
Yep, that's P.O. box.
Permitted to say,
That's fine, see applicant.
okay. Okay.
Is your name on the business license, the lease of the building?
Yes, it is.
Is it on the loan?
No, my name is not on the loan.
Are you helping to pay for it?
Yes, unfortunately, yes,
Are you an employee of Palmetto Venues?
yes.
Would this be considered a mom and pop operation?
Yes,
And you're the mom?
yes.
Okay.
I have a clarification. You mentioned you didn't change the interior footprint of the space.
After, yeah.
But on the drawings we have here, ballroom 105, looks like it did increase in size. And it's hard to tell, but it does look like the kitchens were added.
So after the approval, nothing was changed. That's my understanding of the question that was asked. After the approval, nothing was changed.
After the construction was done.
No, it would be when the plans for the construction were submitted and the town approved the plans. That's when the contractors were hired and work started.
Right.
Right, so when the plans were submitted,
But when you said there was no change, you're saying there was no change from the date construction was done, you had all your approvals to today,
right?
right?
Right, when
You
approvals
weren't
were,
counting what you did in the past.
when the plans are submitted to the town, they have to approve the plans. Once they're approved, then you hire your contractor who hires their subs and work starts. Nothing has changed from when those plans were first submitted to the town.
Okay.
Just for clarification for me, who installed bathrooms?
The contractors.
But the bathrooms were not there prior to you taking over the premises, is
There
that
were
correct?
bathrooms there as far as maybe, did it change a little because we used the same plumbing?
Okay.
So there was something there.
When you said the kitchenettes were they there when you took the space or you added the kitchenettes?
The kitchenettes were not there.
Okay.
We added it, yes.
You added the kitchenettes?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
So I understand that this is a mixed-use building and that there's residential units upstairs, correct?
Yes,
Have you ever had conversations with those people?
absolutely, yes.
Are they here tonight?
I don't see them.
Okay. And when you were scoping out possible spaces for your business, did you take into account that this zone actually butts right up against a residential zone too?
Yes, we were aware that there was a tenant upstairs, and The feedback that we got was that as long as the music stopped at a certain time, that it would not impact the residents. That was the feedback that we received.
Did that feedback come from the landlord?
Yes, it did.
You mentioned the hours of operation. It really you could have events at any time, but now you started to put in that they would stop at 11 p.m. Is that accurate?
Not that we can have it at any time. Initially, the stop time was midnight until we learned about the variance, which I believe was after the first visit from the police officer. That's when we learned that 11 o'clock was the time that all loud music should stop. But prior to that, we were not aware, to be honest.
Have you seen the September 19th email from the code official, Tom Jacobson, where he suggests that the applicant must hire an independent architect? So I think what this is saying, I mean, full disclosure, I do this for a living too. I think that your architect put you in a lot of danger. All right, this is not how this is supposed to be calculated. There's supposed to be sprinklers, there's supposed to be fire separation requirements. Please go back to this person and rectify this, because this is, I don't want anything, I mean, I'm sure that you did everything, by the book.
Right.
I think you were grossly misled.
Okay. But I guess, I don't know if I can ask this question, but are the architectural drawings approved by?
That's his license on there.
No, I
For,
understand
like,
that.
forever.
But as far as the Township of Verona, is that reviewed and approved by someone from the town that can validate whether it's appropriate or not, and if changes are suggested? I'm just wondering.
I can't speak exactly to that. I believe I'll default to Greg, but it's my understanding that regardless of what the municipalities approve, the onus is on the design professional.
Yeah.
There's the testimony about the licensed bartender. So that is in the, I would say, standard contracts that you have
Yes.
with the people that rent.
Yes.
And if that contract would need to be changed prior to it being signed, that on a go-forward basis, under whose authority could change that contract?
It would have to be either myself or my husband.
So you guys could basically remove that licensed bartending requirement at any time?
We can, but that's not something that we would ever want to do, because we want to protect ourselves and our clients.
Okay.
I would have no objection to that being part of any approval, that there has to be a licensed bartender. They're doing it anyway. They'll be happy to have it be a requirement.
Okay. Does the, I guess, rentee have to alert you that they will be serving alcohol in advance?
Yes,
How far in advance do they have to tell you?
when they signed the contract.
And how far in advance do they have to tell you who the licensed bartender is?
At the time that they sign the contract, usually we ask that information. If they don't provide it by then, before we can actually have the party, they have to show it to us, or else they can't bring alcohol to the premises.
Okay.
Can you talk about your trash operations?
Yes. So I believe the garbage comes on Tuesdays and Fridays. So what we have 4 or 5 bins that are outside after each event.
When you
We
say
put
outside, where?
outside behind the building.
Okay.
Okay. And after the event, we put out the trash. The cleaning people come, they put out the trash. On Monday night, my husband goes to the location. He puts out the garbage can on the sidewalk. Initially, again, full transparency, initially, we would leave the garbage can until we came back from work, in the evening. However, we did get a call from the landlord that said that we couldn't do that. And so we made arrangements so that no later than 10, 11 o'clock, we would have either us or someone else would go to the property and put the garbage cans back to the premises. We've never received any complaints, formal complaints, anything from the town stating that there was an issue with garbage. So that's pretty much all I can say regarding that.
So I have to ask before, I'm sure the members of the public joined, you testified that you're not aware of any incidents immediately outside of the facility?
No.
Okay, and that the police were not called at any time for any incidents outside of the Palmetto venues?
My question was up to February of '25.
Okay.
Yes.
Any reason why you chose that date?
If we want to address the elephant in the room, I'll be happy to do so.
Well, I mean, you brought up basically everything leading up to it.
Again, if that is the reason we're here, is because of March of '25, we'll bring that issue up on the record.
That is not the reason, but
Okay.
I think you've painted a picture, but you left out some of the key pieces.
Well, I think the point was to show that's an anomaly that was outside my client's control. There was not a pattern and practice of issues at this property. No fights, nothing up until an anomaly in March of '25 that they could not control, did not happen on their property.
Mr. Palmer, I think now is probably a good time where, I think you'll agree, and if you don't, please let me know, we can discuss it, but the issue of nuisance, or a history of problems at a business would go to the negative criteria. So you talk about the elephant in the room. Everybody knows there was an incident from people who started their evening at your client's establishment. There have been, as your client testified, noise complaints. I think by going to a particular date without extending that date is an incomplete testimony, because this board can weigh nuisance and past practice. The board certainly cannot penalize or take anything into account, as a penalty, but certainly can make its determination based on a history of the use of the property. And as your planner had said, this is unusual because usually someone is here saying, we would like to do this, and there's no history. But here there is a history, and it's certainly a relevant history. So I think that, if you could offer more to the board about that relevant history, and then the board can consider whether that's an element of the positive or more importantly, the negative criteria.
Well, if we're bringing this issue up, I'll lay all my cards on the table where I stand on this issue. My client was given approvals, did everything this town required, and I'm corrected, it was August of '23. Relying on that approval by the town, they borrowed and spent $250,000 in this town. Any business has a growing pain. That is normal. I don't care what the business is. Were there a few noise complaints in the beginning? Yes, and they addressed it. They changed the hours of operation. They lowered music. They became aware of what the music level inside would be to keep it satisfactory outside. They brought garbage cans in at the end of the day. They were told that's not acceptable. They bring it in earlier in the day. These are all minor issues. But they did testify that this was not a pattern and practice of problems. They never had that. Yes, there was the incident, grossly unfortunate incident, in March of '25. Suddenly, within a month, less than a month of that incident, my client has their approval rescinded. They get a complaint about fire, about signage, about anything this town could come up with they're suddenly violated. And now we're before this board in good faith again. I submit it is not proper to deny my client's application because of one severe incident that they did not control. There was nothing they could have humanly done to stop that incident in March of '25, and they should not be penalized for it. They've done everything this town wants. They applied in good faith, and they relied to their detriment on an official of this town. And that's my position here.
Well, for the record, as per the zoning official's letter, it is Verona's position that the zoning official who gave that approval was not authorized to grant that approval, and that it was an ultra vires act. That's for a later date, but we are here this evening. We are not here to determine whether whether your client has to apply for a variance now or not. The fact is you are applying for a variance, and that is what our issue is this evening. With regard to that variance and the criteria that is your applicant's burden to meet, okay, the negative criteria in particular, we have the construction code official's report, we have the police chief's report, okay? They both, my words, indicate that the property had been used and was causing a nuisance. That is what I believe Mr. Weston was getting to, and you had said there's an elephant in the room. And I think it's incumbent on this board to hear testimony about that incident. And you're saying, and not your testimony, but your client's testimony, certainly your client is free to testify that she had no control over that. But it's certainly important to this board when considering whether to continue to allow this use, to hear something about what you started on, but we're asking you to please finish.
The husband was there that night. I'll be happy to put him on regarding that night. Regarding the other issues, two things. Number one, the town is arguing ultra vires for that official. I counter that with the term of apparent authority. My client had no way of knowing whether that official had the authority or not. Every indicia was that he had that authority. So to my clients, he had that apparent authority, and then they relied to their detriment on that apparent authority. Number one. Number two, I think it's unfair if this official did not have the authority and denied, and they came in the beginning, like everybody else does. Unfortunately, the cart was before the horse, according to the town. None of this would be part of the application. None of the noise or the unfortunate incident would be part of this. So I think it's unfair to judge my client now when, in a sense, the board is saying they should have been here originally. How many other businesses that receive variances in this town and other towns, if suddenly we have a redo a year or two later, and now they're judged by what happened during that town? So I don't think that should happen to my client. That's unfair. If we're here in the beginning, it's an initial application, and I don't think it's fair to judge them by an incident in the municipal parking lot. But the husband was there that night. I'll be happy to put him on.
Okay. Just coincidentally, I'm sure you're familiar with Jantuch versus Verona. And that case has been around almost 75 years now. And it speaks of ultra vires acts and whether a municipal official's mistake, even if it's relied upon, can be cured by the municipality. So, there's arguments to be made on both sides of that.
Right. We could argue equitable estoppel, but that's all.
Right. I understand your position tonight that past practice should not matter. However, in my opinion, it goes to particular suitability of the property, because there is a history that the police chief and the construction code official have documented and have put in front of this board and in front of you and your client. So it is relevant. Now, yes, the cart is before the horse, but it is still something that this board can't ignore and would be really not fulfilling its duty as a board to consider those. It's before us, it's happened, and it's something to be considered, and we're welcoming your opportunity to address that.
Right, okay.
The husband will testify regarding that.
Okay, can I ask a question? So I just want to ask a question because I'm not quite understanding. I understand you're saying that the official who approved it should not have. But it seems coincidental that for a year, it wasn't identified that it was approved incorrectly. And it seems coincidental that before the incident, no one has ever approached us or said that we're going to revoke your CO because the person that approved it should not have. So with that said, it just seems a bit hard for us to understand, and maybe you can explain why now this is coming up versus 6 months ago, well, 6 months before versus before the incident. So I would like to ask if someone can explain that, because I don't seem to understand.
As I said earlier, if an applicant gets what they're looking for, then that's good. They don't have any recourse, they don't have any need to come to us. In this case, the applicant received the approval of the zoning officer, and if I'm not mistaken, we were through 4 zoning officers in that time period. That particular zoning officer had only been here a month or 2 at the time, and they made a decision clearly to this board and to anyone who's reviewed it since that was not consistent with our zoning regulations. And it took a while because no one looks over their shoulder immediately to see what they're doing and what's been approved. And that's how it takes that long until something spurs a review. And in this case, something did.
So based on the feedback that you guys mentioned, the terminology was we were a nuisance. I think that's what you said. It was a nuisance to the area. Is that the terminology you
That's
used?
the phrase I use, yes.
Yes, okay. And there were complaints, about noise. So at that point, why was there not a review then to say, wait a minute, we're getting these complaints, there's concern, let's review, the CO or, the approval then, right? Because again, it just seems very coincidental, to be transparent, that it's not like there were no complaints, right? You said something would normally spark, a review or a need for a review after it's been approved. So in my opinion, if there was really a concern or complaint, I would think that the town of Verona would have did whatever their due diligence to look into whatever is happening and the approval process to determine, okay, this is an issue or this is not an issue.
I'm not so sure that I agree, though. I think it is contingent on the size of the incident because, for example, a noise complaint could be pretty small, whereas if there's a major incident and 300 people come running out that door when they're only allowed to have 150, well, that's going to put up a red flag, and it is our responsibility to recognize safety is first, period. It doesn't matter when it's caught. It needs to be caught.
Would you like to hear from the husband?
Can I just ask a few
Oh, sure,
questions? So patrons during the events, when the events end, when they're in the front room, do they have to exit through the front entrance onto Bloomfield Avenue?
Yes, so it depends, right? If we don't have an event in the back room, in the larger room, they can, if their cars are in the back, they can leave in either exit, right? But if there is an event, which we seldomly had two events going on at the same time, I can count on one hand how many times we had two events. So they can use both exits depending on where they park.
It's the same, if just the, let's say, the larger ballroom is being used when that event is over, they could go out either entrance?
Correct.
As long as the front room is not being used?
Correct.
Since occupancy was mentioned, how do you regulate the occupancy of the venue?
So we're approved for 150, but we only bought 120 chairs. So we don't reach capacity of 150 for the larger ballroom. The smaller ballroom, we're approved for 64, I believe. We have 50 chairs. So that's how we make sure that we do not go over the capacity, if that answers your question.
I guess more to follow up on that. So there's no one then that you don't really count the amount of people that are coming in and out, and you don't get like a pre-registered number of guests that are coming?
So on the contract, yes, we do request the number of guests that are coming. So it's stipulated on the contract, and that's what we use as reference to set up, to know how many chairs to set up. We would clearly know if there's more because people would be standing around, right? Because usually we've never had an event where no tables or chairs are set up and it's just, just a party, because we're not a club. It's all private parties for celebrations. So we know we would know, I would say, if the capacity is more than it should be.
So just to clarify, if I book a party with you and I say there's 100 people coming, you only set up 100 chairs. The other chairs are put away somewhere. And if 110 show up, then I have to come to you and say, oh, we have 10 more people.
Correct.
And then I presume that would be no problem.
Correct.
But if you go beyond the 120, then you would say, no, you're just not going to seat them, and they would have to leave.
But just to take that a step further, depending on the circumstances, usually you have to have two exits out of a room, and you can't go through another room to get to an exit, right? So it's contingent on whether there's sprinklers in the building, it's contingent on what the travel distances are to those exits, and none of that information was on the architectural drawings. So it's a major flaw.
Okay, sorry. That is not my specialty. That is not my purview.
Totally.
Ask me anything about cancer, I will answer, but this is not my specialty. So I totally rely on what's given to me.
Yep.
But the plans you submitted show the same single front
Yes.
exit and the same single rear exit.
Correct.
You did not change the doors in the building.
No,
You did not take away any doors or exits.
no.
This is what was there before you took occupancy.
Yes.
This is what you submitted to the town,
Correct.
and this is what was approved.
Correct.
But the change of use is what kicks in those requirements, and going from a B to an A is a change of use.
Dr. Lewis, I guess I just have a few more questions. In terms of like the utilization of the facility, when somebody books an event, who basically runs the event in terms of serving the food, waiters, seating the guests, receiving the guests, all of that function?
Okay. Our sole purpose is to rent the space. We have a contract. We tell them exactly what they can or cannot do. We do not serve food. We don't even recommend waiters or waitresses. We don't have a list. The only thing we recommend are caterers, which are the three places that I mentioned, and I forgot one other. Bloom, there's a Bloom restaurant on Bloomfield Avenue, so there's 4 restaurants that we've had several meetings to partner with. So we don't get involved in those type of things. We just provide the space, table, chair, make sure if they have a bartender, make sure there's their license, and that's as far as we get. We don't get involved with the food serving or anything like that.
So different than, for instance, a location where you book a wedding and then they do all the planning for you and they have the waiters and the catering and all that.
Right.
Or different than, for instance, a restaurant where you just have a large group come in and they do all the work for you at the restaurant.
Correct.
Or a retail space where they host parties and do services, for example.
Yes.
Examples that were previously given.
Mhm.
I think it was mentioned that the night that was brought up in question, were you there for that evening?
I was not there, my husband
Okay,
was there.
because previously you'd said that both you and your husband were there.
So initially I was there. We always start together. It's always two people because, as I said, one is outside, one is inside. But once, everyone is settled, the party is going on, one of us will leave. And sometimes, we'll both stay, but sometimes, if we have events back to back, we'll kind of divide and conquer. So one person will stay and then the other person would go, and then next day we would switch.
So wholly dependent on basically local law enforcement or anything else or something occur on that location. Basically one, maybe two people. Should more people come in, anything get unruly, it's just one, maybe two people.
Correct, which is very typical for event spaces. This is how event spaces work. There's not, a whole bunch of people there to navigate space.
Ms. Lewis, of the 80 to 100 events that you've had,
Mhm.
how many would you say required the bartender?
I would say less than half.
Okay. And would you have a breakdown of how many of those spaces have been rented, say, by Verona individuals?
We have a few, not the majority, but we do have a few that were rented by Verona residents and neighboring towns.
Can we hold questioning? The court reporter needs a break.
Oh.
I'm sure we could all use one, but it's now 7 minutes to 10. Would 10 o'clock do? 10 o'clock would do. So we make for a fast break, and we'll stand adjourned till 10 o'clock. Let's resume. Okay. Yes, we're resuming. We're resuming at 10:04, and I believe the official position is the board is still asking questions of the previous witness. So,
I'm sorry, I just wanted to hear from the husband, and then I'm
Right.
not cutting anybody off.
no, we did want to hear from the husband, but
Oh, okay.
we were finishing up
Okay.
with the witness, and the public needs to have an opportunity to ask some questions.
Sure.
Okay, so, that said, is there anyone from the board who has additional questions? Where'd Bill go? You can hear us out in the hall, right? Okay. Okay, we'll wait for him. 7 minutes wasn't enough time. Okay.
hear the door. Oh, no, that's. You see anybody else in there? Yes.
We'd like to think you are that important. Okay, so where we were was board questions for the current witness. And I guess this is a good time. In council's letter, your council's letter, April 30th, one of the points raised is with the HVAC system and the splits that are on the side of the building. Where does that stand with regard to an application?
I can answer that. I approved the zoning of that in July, and I believe that, and it was submitted by the landlord, and I believe, I don't know if they're through building for the inspection or not, but that was taken care of.
We're going through your letter like.
I second that.
Okay. Questions for the witness? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public who has questions of the witness on the testimony presented this evening? If you'd be so kind as to come up to the microphone, we need a name. Down.
Hi, my name is Dan Kaufman, and I live in Verona.
You spell your last name?
Kaufman. And this is on the security discussion that we have just been talking about. So I do feel that owners should be held accountable for their patrons, and I know that there's a reasonable limit to that. However,
Has to be a question to the witness.
Okay,
No statements yet.
I'll come back.
Good. We'll reserve time.
Dex Polizzi, Verona. You mentioned that all of your events are seated events. However, how do you explain images and videos from the night of the incident and other parties where there were no seated guests, only standing room guests?
I'm not sure. First of all, we did not post any videos from that night. That's number one. Number two, there is a dance floor, right? Although we may have tables and chairs inside of the venue, there's a dance floor so that people can dance. So if there are videos on our Instagram page where you see people standing and dancing, that does not mean that there were not tables and chairs. We've never had an event where it was like a club scene with no tables or chairs for
I've
people.
seen videos that look like club scenes from patrons and guests.
Not time for you to testify.
Apologies. How do you explain the advertising that would go on Instagram and Snapchat for paid events, door charges, and those that advertise alcohol available to guests?
I am not sure what you're referencing to.
I'm referencing to the number of advertisements that are on Instagram and that have been posted to Snapchat about your events hosted by parties that are advertising alcohol consumption, door charges, and no restriction of the number of guests.
Okay. We don't have Snapchat. That's the first thing. Second thing is we don't advertise for events. We don't have events, right? We rent for events to take place. Now, some people, they may tag us, like if they're having an event, they may tag our page and it populates on our page, but we don't have events. We don't throw events. We rent so that events can take place.
So then what is your position on your ability to control your patrons who would advertise in this manner across the internet?
I have no control over what they advertise. We go by what's on the contract. If the contract says this is the event, this is the number of people that will be attending this event, this, whether there'll be alcohol or not, so on and so forth, we go by that. We do not take part in putting together flyers or disseminate flyers. That's not part of the business.
So it's totally permissible for your patrons to do that?
I'm not going to say it's
regardless.
permissible. What I will say.
But you did nothing to stop it?
Could you
Well,
finish your question, answer, please?
I can't stop something that I'm not aware of.
You cited 5 incidents to your knowledge involving the police. However, the chief of police cited at least 8. Are you aware of other events that might have occurred involving noise complaints that perhaps didn't escalate to citations, and as well as fights and assault by your patrons?
We have not received any citations for noise. Each time.
Are you aware that the residents have been personal witness to fights among your patrons and have been threatened by your patrons multiple times?
Absolutely not. I've never heard of that. This is the first time I'm hearing that. And to be honest, I don't even see that happening. I'm not saying it's not, I'm not saying, whoever said it is fabricating, but I don't even see that happening.
Now, were you present at all of these times to say that you would be able to experience or see all these things happening?
No,
when
I
they were
was not
going on?
present at every event all day for the entire team.
Was your husband present when these things were happening? And what about after hours?
What about after hours? After hours, once the door is locked, then
Once your patrons spill out into the street, who's regulating the violence?
I
object to that question. That's presupposing violence.
I've witnessed it myself.
Well, I have not
The
witnessed
applicant
it.
can only speak to what goes on with their property inside.
Right.
They can't control once it's off their property legally.
So as business owners, is there any accountability on your
The
part for what happens?
accountability extends to the space, right? The space, our space that we were renting, we were leasing, anything that happens within that space, we should be held accountable for and we're responsible for. But
And nothing
anything
that happens outside of this space?
Anything that happens outside of the space, yes, we should do our due diligence to mitigate and try to de-escalate anything that may potentially happen. But I can't say that it is our responsibility to monitor what happens outside of the building.
Can you confirm that for all of your events, you did the proper due diligence to ensure that there were no safety concerns, noise violations, serving of alcohol in excess without proper security or crowd control measures in place?
As far as I can say, yes, we've done our due diligence to make sure we remain safe, because that's priority as well as the clients and as well as the community, because if that's the case, then we would have allowed anything, battery's going down here, we would have allowed anything and everything to happen, and we did not do that.
Then why over the course of the year were there, or a year and a half that you were operating, why were there, I have the emails myself, numbers of garbage violations, noise complaints, issues with parking, issues with violent attendees, issues with noise? You can attest that you did everything in your control to prevent these things from happening?
I can attest that everything that was brought to our attention, we addressed. We've never received any type of citation or even a letter from the town or anywhere else stating that there was an issue with the garbage. We received a phone call from the landlord about making sure that we don't leave the garbage can out all day, yes, and as soon as we received that feedback, we made sure that we addressed it. We never received any citation for noise. Yes, we did have police officers that came 5 different times to say that the volume was allowed for us to bring it down, to which we complied.
Are you aware of the DEP complaints for balloons that you guys disposed of in the Peckman River?
We did not dispose balloons in the Peckman River, and were not aware that that happened, but it was not done by us.
So would you argue that your biggest concern was limiting your exposure to liability and not actually the safety of the residents of Verona?
I beg to differ, because if that's the case, we would not have taken the precautions, or at least attempted to take the precautions to protect everyone involved.
And what were those precautions?
Making sure we have a lease, making sure we stick to the lease, making sure we stick to the ordinance of the time, to bring down the music. And it's not that the music can't be played, right? It just had to be at a certain level. So everything that we were asked to do, we did.
What precautions did
Everything-
you take to prevent the use of weapons? Or the
We're-
carrying of
We're
weapons?
an event space. We're not a club. We're not required to have security. I don't know of any event space. I've been doing event planning and wedding planning for over 20 years. I have yet to go to an event space where there's metal detectors, where there's, a security officer. Personally, if I go to an event space and there's metal detectors and security, I'm not going to even want to rent that space, because what does that tell about the space? So there was no reason for us to even think about having metal detectors or, a security officer there, because we've never had an issue prior to that date as far as, security violations that we were aware of.
Right. So do you think it's possible that there were a number of violations and complaints that perhaps weren't raised to your level because of the, let's say, discretion of the police department and the Verona officials?
I can't speak to that, but what I could say is that they were not brought to our attention. And if they were, I welcome the police chief or anyone in Verona to provide proof that we were made aware and did not address it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's it.
Something came up. Am I allowed to ask a question on the clarification from that conversation? Just one quick question. Are
Sure.
you aware of any of your clients charging a fee to enter?
Yes, there has been a couple of events where I can remember where they charged a fee. Yes.
And do they serve alcohol?
I'm not going to say no, because they could have, but I can't tell you exactly if they did.
Thank you.
Sorry, one question.
Sure.
Mrs. Lewis, so typically when an event ends at 11 o'clock, how long after 11 do you typically stay on site before you leave?
Sure. So all events don't end at 11.
I'm just.
Yeah, okay.
It's the ones that do end at.
Okay, yes. So everyone doesn't leave at the same time. There are people who leave earlier, and there are people who kind of linger around, right? So I would say within 30 to 45 minutes, at one point, everyone leaves. At that point, that's when cleaning starts, because usually we have an event the following day. So we'll do the preliminary cleaning. We have to remove all the chairs, all the tables, stock them in the storage room, so that when the cleaning people, and then we do the initial sweeping, so that when the cleaning company comes, they can do what they need to do really quick. It can take at least an hour for us to be able to do that, to make sure that the garbage is out, make sure that the room is at least swept, and make sure that all the tables and chairs are back in the storage area.
Dr. Lewis, I just want to follow up on that question. When you became aware that people were charging an entrance fee, Now, your testimony is either you or your husband was there.
Mhm.
What did you do?
It's not against policy to charge a fee. It's not against our policy. I'm not sure if it's against the policy of the town. If it is, I'm not aware of it.
Okay.
But it's not against policy.
Thank you.
Board finished now?
So if the events generally end at 11, or at least some of them, what time do they start?
Usually it's a 6-hour rental. So 6 hours before the end, and the end time is, as I said before, is when the music stops.
Okay. And is that just limited to Friday evenings, Saturdays, and midday Sunday?
Typically, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We did have, I think it was a wedding that was on a Thursday, but those are very rare. And we had like a corporate event on a weekday, but those are very rare.
So then there is that potential for overlap with the middle school traffic.
We've never had that. We've never had, not that early in the day during the weekday.
Okay.
It's usually in the evening.
Dr. Lewis, one of the points we've raised is the size of the venue space.
Mhm.
Earlier there were contracts for specific amounts. Now we're hearing that there are events, cover charges, or events advertised to potentially open to the public.
Not open to the public. We don't do any events that's open to the public. It's on our contract.
Well, the contract is now appearing to be flexible. Once they run their event,
No,
where this is, okay.
No.
So it seems a little bit flexible at this point.
no.
If there's cover charges, do you have a guest list beforehand?
There's always a guest list, and the cover charge, for example, I can think of a party specifically. She was having a birthday party. She did not have all of the money to pay for the rental space, so she charged her guests,
In advance or at the door?
in advance. I don't know. I believe for that person, it was in advance. Yes, it was in advance because there was no collection of money at the time.
So there were no events where there was an unknown entry in terms of like quantity of personnel that may or may not attend the
No.
event?
No.
Okay.
I have a letter in front of me from the fire inspector. It was dated on March the 19th, saying that there were a number of fire violations and hazards that existed in that building. Have you addressed them as of now?
I am not aware of any fire violations. We are leasing the property. We're not the owners of the property. I'm not sure if the fire violations were provided to the landlord. I am not sure. I know that in January, a fire inspector came, and from my understanding, the only thing that needed to be done was an exit sign that needed to be placed on top of a door, which the landlord did do. We're not aware of any fire violations that came directly to us.
This letter happens to be addressed to Robert Lewis.
Yes, which is my husband. Yep. I mean, at that time, that's when we learned about it, but I'm saying prior to that, we were not aware of any fire violations. And as I said, in January, someone came, and I think they came back in February to make sure that it was done, and there was no conversation about there being a fire violation as far as we're concerned.
There's another, just have hold of another one that says applicant must provide testimony to the board of maximum occupancy and show calculations. Provide testimony to the board determining if a sprinkler system is or is not required, and all open fire code violations must be abated. So have you addressed those?
Again, I'm not aware of any
This letter's
fire
written
violation.
September the 19th.
The department will be.
Okay, just an FYI.
Okay.
I think it might be safe, Mrs. Polizzi.
I'm gonna let it.
Okay.
Paul Petrangeli, Martin Road, Verona, Petrangeli. I just have a quick question, basically, on what we just brought up. With the charged events now, you stated there was more than one. The one you just referenced was a birthday party. I understand that. Sometimes it's hard to pay for things. But to me, if you're having more than one, how would you regulate that number if it's a pay at the door? Because I could show up, anyone could show up if there's no guest list, pay at the door, number one. And then number two, does that change the land use? Does it go as a club? Does it stay as an event space if it's a charged entrance fee? I just wanted to know.
My recollection, and my husband can testify as well, we have not had any events where it was paid at the door.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Dex Blitzy, Verona.
Just, you've already,
Can I not go again?
I prefer to have everybody go before you go seconds.
This is topical and quick. Are you aware that there was an event on Sunday, January 5th, 2025, which advertises at-the-door admission for $35? How do you ensure that you have a guest list ahead of time when you're charging at-the-door admission $35 for specific events?
Again, we go by the contract, right? Our conversation is with the person that's renting the facility, and we stipulate exactly what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
How do you enforce that contract when people are showing up at the door and paying $35? How are they vetted in advance? How are they on a guest list in advance?
Well, it's like any other event. I can't ensure who is on the guest list of a person that's having a party. That's beyond my control. The only thing I can do is have a conversation with the person that we're renting to and tell them what the expectations are and review the contract. But I cannot tell someone, who they can invite and who they can't invite.
I'm sorry, I was under the impression that you said you would have a guest list for events like
They
this.
have guest lists, not I. I don't ask for I don't ask for their guest list.
So who's responsible for controlling the audience at an event like this where people can pay admission?
I don't know any event space that asks for a guest list or tries to control which guests are permissible and which guests are not.
So should I assume that an event like this would be open to as many people regardless of occupancy if there's no control like you just stated?
There's control as far as how many people are in the facility, yes, because we have an occupancy limit.
And so who was enforcing that occupancy limit when these things were happening?
We enforce it because, again, there's always tables and chairs, and that's how we regulate to make sure that we are not above occupancy, because if we see that there's a whole bunch of people standing around and not sitting in chairs because there's no more chairs, that means you're above occupancy, but we've never had that issue.
So was it a matter of you just never reached full capacity at any of your events where you needed to enforce that?
We've never reached capacity where we needed to tell people to leave because we're above capacity. We have not been in that situation.
And what would prevent that situation from happening?
Regulating the number of chairs and tables that are occupied. That's our process.
And when events aren't seated events, how do you
We don't
regulate
have
that?
non-seated events.
Mr. Polizzi?
Okay, I'm done.
Emily Polizzi, Verona. You had stated in your testimony that you didn't even think about soundproofing.
Correct.
So it is an event space. You've stated a couple times you've been an event planner for over 20 years. Were you unconcerned about the noise generated by the events to be hosted in the space?
I wouldn't say I was unconcerned. I was just not aware. As an event planner, as a wedding planner, you're not focusing on the building. You're focusing on planning. So that to make sure that the event goes according to what your client wants. Looking at the building to determine whether there's soundproof, that's beyond my purview.
Okay, and I understand that the landlord, Kim John, stated, you said that the residents would not be bothered by the noise, so that was
I don't want to
sufficient.
I don't want to say that they would not be bothered. However, in our conversation with the landlord, he did inform us that we had to stop the music by a certain time so that it does not impact the residents.
Okay, and you did state that after the first noise complaint, you developed a relationship with that neighbor and adjustments were made by moving the speakers from the front ballroom, or what was the
So-
adjustment that was made?
Okay, so after the first complaint from the tenant, we developed a relationship, we exchanged phone numbers, he explained that the front room was very loud. We acknowledged that there were loudspeakers in the front room, we have built-in speakers in the front room, but that day we had exterior speakers in the front room. So ever since that day, we don't allow speakers in the front room. They have to use the speakers that are built in, and that those speakers has a limit as to they're not as loud as DJ speakers. So those were the adjustments that we made. We also gave him our phone number, as I said, so that is if there's ever an issue, they can feel comfortable to reach out to us so that we can adjust, because sometimes we may not realize, or sometimes the DJ may put up the music without us even knowing, right? And that has happened, right? We're there, the music is at a good level, we go to the office, and next thing you know, the music is back up. So in that situation, we would go to the DJ and we would let them know that they need to turn it down. And we've actually lost bookings because of that. So,
How about the speakers in the back room?
yes, we have no tenants above us in the back room.
Do you know you do have neighbors who live close enough to be, well, neighbors who are affected by the speakers in the back room?
Okay. I'm not going to debate whether that's true or not, because again,
It is true.
Okay, I'm not going
I'm
to
a
debate
neighbor.
that. Okay, I respect that. I'm not going to debate that. However, what I can say is when we have the music in the back room, and even when the police officers did come, we would literally go outside with the police officers, and they would attest that they cannot hear the music outside of. If the door is closed, there's two doors before you go out, before you're outside. If the doors are closed and the music is playing, we could not hear the music outside of the door. So if you are a neighbor with connecting walls, then I agree, you would hear it. Even if it's not heard outside, you would hear it.
I must
But-
have sensitive ears then. How about violation of the noise ordinance past 11 p.m., regardless of the volume, that music continued to play past 11 p.m. on multiple occasions?
My understanding is past 11 p.m., the noise level cannot be a certain level. Not that we cannot have music past 11. If I stand to be corrected, I welcome that. But that was my understanding, that past 11 o'clock, your music have to be reduced. And that's what the officers told us, that the music have to be reduced. We cannot have it loud.
I don't want to misspeak. I do believe the music has to be off at 11 p.m.
If that is correct, we welcome that feedback. I was not aware.
That is your feedback. And your neighbors in the back are affected, and no personal relationship was attempted to be established with those neighbors, and they were negatively impacted by the volume, by the violation of the noise ordinance.
And
It's been brought to your attention.
Okay, I respect that.
Sharon O'Donnell, Verona. Just one question. Well, actually three, but I'll keep it to three. Is there anyone counting actual attendees at the door rather than just the chairs coming out of the closet?
No, we do not count attendees at the door.
Okay,
However,
thank
we
you, that's
do-
all.
Okay.
And,
Finish your answer, please.
well, she did.
Well, wasn't done talking.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Excuse me.
However, what we do monitor is to make sure that people are not standing around because there are no more chairs. That way we can assess to see if we are over capacity. But even so, our capacity is 150 and we have 120 chairs.
Do you require a table, which is customary at event spaces, since you do offer seating of any type of attendee list or, people who are attending? Is there any list or is there any documentation of who's expected at the party?
No, we do
Okay.
not request that.
All right. Can you tell me about what types of security your business engages in?
So the only security we have, which is consistent with all event spaces, is cameras. We do
I
not
see.
have a security guard. We do not have metal detectors. That's not something that's standard within the event space industry.
And this would take in the front door and who's coming and going?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, I guess it's sort of, I'm kind of stuck in my head about that whole selling tickets and not knowing who's coming in. But maybe that's just me.
If it's a private party and they decide to sell tickets because they don't want to spend the entire cost associated with the party, that's not uncommon.
I see. Do you perform any oversight relevant to the quiet enjoyment of the neighbor's property and the neighbors around there? What type of oversight do you have for that prior to a complaint being registered? I understand that once a complaint is registered, you have done what you could, but so it doesn't get to the point
Correct.
of a complaint?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes, what we do, again, if we notice that the music is louder than it should be, we do go to the DJ, we speak to the DJ, and if we see that it's consistent, we have a conversation with the person that we booked with.
Okay. Do you consider loitering a detriment to quiet enjoyment?
I would say so.
Yeah, okay. So are you aware that there is considerable loitering that goes on after every evening event?
So no. But
Okay,
what
there is.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
not debating. But what I can say is anything that we notice, we address. If we notice it, we address. We don't see something and say, oh, we don't care, because it's a reflection of our business, if a reflection of our character. We are professional people. So we like to hold a certain standard, and we do everything that we can to hold that standard.
Have you ever been a planner, for a simple term, for a long time? Has that ever come to your attention before, and what did you do about it?
Has what come to my
Loitering and what happens with loitering when that goes on? Do you ever recall what you did?
No, because that's not, like, that's not what you do. When I'm planning a wedding, the dress, the outfit, I don't get involved in those type of things.
Right, okay. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Can you describe where the security cameras are? Are they just on the inside?
Yes,
Are
we
there
have
any on the
2 in
outside?
the front room and 2 in the back room, and it's facing both ends. So
And nothing on the
it's-
outside?
No, we don't have security on the outside.
Good evening, Thomas Monroe, Verona, New Jersey. Dr. Lewis, there's been much conversation about a contract with your customers. Have you produced a form of that contract for the board in part of your application?
I'm not sure if it was submitted with the application.
Is there a reason you didn't submit that contract?
I don't think it was asked.
That contract controls the relationship, though, between you and your customers, correct? Is the landlord involved in that contract in any way?
No.
When your customers rent the space, are they required to obtain their own insurance?
It's not required, no.
So it's not part of your contract?
I think this is. Hello? Okay, it's back on. I'm sorry.
It's not part of your contract, an insurance requirement?
I think it's a recommendation, but it's not required. I know for sure it's not required.
Do you have any type of insurance to cover Palmetto venues?
Absolutely.
Does it include a provision with alcohol, anything involving alcohol?
I don't recall, I can't say.
Okay. Now, you discussed earlier a $250,000 loan,
Correct.
but you were not on that loan?
No.
Who took that loan?
My husband and we have some investors.
Are those investors partners with Palmetto Venues? They have an interest in the company?
Not necessarily, no.
And who was that loan with?
I don't know, BCG Bank, I don't know. It's a bank.
Did you submit anything to this board related to that loan?
It was not.
I don't think that has anything to do with land use. Yeah.
Well, I think in order to get a variance, they have to demonstrate a hardship. I believe the implication is that they're going to undergo some type of financial hardship. So wouldn't that be relevant to the
Mr.
board?
Monroe, hardship would be with a D2 variance.
Okay,
This is the D1, which a hardship is not an element of a D1 variance.
okay, thank you. So you haven't submitted the lease? Have you submitted part of the lease?
I submitted everything to my attorney.
Okay. Now, does that lease, in that lease with your landlord, does he make any representations as to the condition of the property?
In what sense? What do you mean?
Well, in terms, you're still paying rent.
Correct.
What is the monthly rent?
Do I have to disclose that?
Again, we're way
it's-
into it.
Like, I don't
Well, it's
understand.
part of the application. It's on the addendum to variance application, May 30th, 2025. It says that they're still paying rent. It's not relevant?
It's relevant that they're still,
Yeah.
it's relevant that they're still paying rent.
Okay.
The amount is not relevant.
The representations by the landlord as to the condition of the property being provided to them, is that relevant?
This has to do with land use. It doesn't have to do with specifics of.
Well, it doesn't have to do with the variance that's going to be granted to them? If the landlord makes representations that the property is supposed to be in a certain condition, and it's not in that condition to the point where the township shuts it down, why are they still paying
It becomes a legal issue
rent?
with the landlord.
Okay, do you have any cause of action or complaints against the landlord?
No. It becomes a legal issue with the landlord. It's
And the
not a
board-
zoning issue.
The board has no interest in knowing about anything with the relationship between this tenant, the applicant, and the landlord.
The landlord signed approval on the application, that's all that matters.
Well, I would suggest, what's the name of the landlord? Because the prior application for this property, that certification signed by the landlord identified a
There'll be
different
an
owner.
opportunity at the end for you to bring that up to our
Okay.
attention before we go into deliberation.
Okay, so the board, they want to hear any questions on the relationship between the tenant and the landlord?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, the applicant brought up the loan, $250,000 loan, and the amount of money it is costing, and they had indicated they are still paying rent. I think Mr. Monroe should be given some latitude, pursuing some questions that are relevant to that, because it was the testimony, and we all heard on more than one occasion that there's a loan outstanding. So, my legal opinion, as much as it's getting late, and I'd like to say, I don't think he has the right to ask. I think he does have the right to ask.
How does that impact land use?
Well, the applicant brought it up. And if the applicant brought it up, then members of the public have a right to ask questions about the issue. Now, I'm not saying he can go down the road, but I think, they brought up the financial aspect of this. It's not an element, because they are seeking a D1 and not a D2, it is not an element, but it's certainly something that the applicant felt was important enough to raise. So a member of the public should have the right to continue that line of questioning.
Oh, what does that have to do?
I don't necessarily agree. The applicant also said she was a wedding planner, and we probably wouldn't ask her if an A-line dress would look good on somebody as part of the zoning application. In this case, as far as the zoning application is concerned, we are well aware that there is an outstanding loan. We are well aware that they are still paying rent. We are well aware that the owner is absolutely not involved in anything to do with land use with any of his tenants. And so it's a line of questioning that's not going to move this application in any direction. So
Maybe I could wrap things up with the last question then. Are there any other hardships that Palmetto Venues is incurring other than a financial hardship?
Emotional, yes,
Emotional.
yes.
You have any manifestations of those emotional
No.
anxieties? Counsel, you know what you have to do to prove that she made the
Tell me what I know,
allegation.
sir. Do not tell me what I know.
Okay. Okay. So,
God knows what I know. You don't.
God help the Lord.
Okay, let's bring this back to civility. All right, there's no need to go in that direction.
He went in that direction, for the record, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and that's what I was talking to, both of you.
Attorney at law of the state of New Jersey. Unprofessional conduct. Just for the record.
Okay. Is there anyone else from the public who has a question of this witness? Seeing none, counsel, next witness.
Ms. Lopes. Sir, can you give your full name?
Robert Lewis. Lewis is Louis.
Mr. Lewis, can you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Okay. Sir, are you married to Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
How long?
26 years.
So you've been involved with her during her wedding planning, part-time job, so to speak.
Yes.
Bringing your attention to Palmetto. Were you present on the night of March 15th, 2025?
Yes.
Was your wife there initially as well?
Yes.
And is it correct that the two of you were always there in the beginning, the one of you usually leaves?
Correct.
So once this party started, your wife left.
Correct.
Regarding this party, do you remember how many people were booked for this party?
80 people.
And was that the number of chairs that you set up?
Yes.
And was that number exceeded?
No.
Do you remember what this party was for?
Birthday party for a young lady celebrating her 40th birthday party.
Do you know where that woman lived?
West Orange.
Was there a theme that night?
Yes, it was prom night.
So for her 40th birthday, she had a prom night theme?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
All right. Do you remember if there was music?
Yes.
Do you remember if she had liquor?
Yes.
Did she have a licensed bartender?
Yes.
You checked that yourself?
Yes.
Did the party itself were there any problems during the party?
No.
Do you remember what the hours of this party was booked for?
It was from 6 to 10. We knew we'd give them from 5 to 10, 1 hour to prepare, to set up, and 1 hour to clean up.
So they were there at 5, so the caterer could set up their food at 5 o'clock?
Correct.
Guests would arrive around 6?
Correct.
And then the music would shut down at 10?
Correct.
And people leaving the venue, was it kind of in line with normally happens in these type of events?
Normally happen, they typically trickle away. They don't typically leave all at once. You always have a few people who would help put the chairs up, put the tables up, and typically they would have decoration they would take down.
So some may leave on or around 10 o'clock, some may be 5, 10 after, quarter after, like any party.
Correct.
People would start filtering out.
Correct.
What time did the last people leave the party?
It was around 10:45.
And you were there?
Yes.
So when the last person, whether it's this party or any party, what happens when the last person leaves?
What happened, I would go lock the door, then I'll start cleaning up, put the chairs away, put the tables away, put the trash away, and so we could get ready for tomorrow.
In this particular night, so it was about quarter to 10, more or less, when the last person left.
Correct.
You locked the door.
Correct.
Did something happen thereafter?
I was inside in the big room cleaning, and about 5 minutes later, I want to say, then I heard banging on the door. And I ran to the door and see what was banging. I saw a few people yelling and banging, and I opened
Were they
it.
some of the people from the party?
Yes. And then when
So you heard the banging, you opened the door, and what happened?
that's when I started hearing the shooting. And I let a few people in, and
How many people came in?
about eight people came in. It was about 8 people came in.
Is that
And
who was by the door?
yes.
Was there anybody else immediately out there?
No, I checked to see if anyone out there so I could let everyone in. There was no one else in. After the 8 people came in, I locked the door.
All right, after you locked the door, what did you do?
We all went inside the big room.
And
Okay, for
then
safety, then I called the police.
you called the police?
Yes.
And then anything else happened that you're aware of?
It was kind of chaotic outside, and we were trying to calm everyone down inside, waiting for the police so people could go back outside. And when police came, I gave my story, and that was it.
Now regarding Palmetto, that's an LLC?
That is correct.
Who are the members of the LLC? In a colloquial term, who are the stockholders?
Myself and my wife. Yes, she's the boss.
Regarding all other aspects, you heard your wife's testimony?
Correct.
You agree with saying?
Yes.
Anything you need to change or add?
The only thing I would like to add is there was 2 paid events. One was the birthday party, and the other event was a networking dating site. That's the only 2 events that we had. Typically, we do not have paid events, but it was, to my recollection, there's only 2 paid events we ever had.
Now, the person who booked this networking dating event, did they still book for a specific number of people?
Yes, because they anticipated about 35 people.
So then you would have set up 35 tables and chairs?
That's correct. Because that's how many tickets that they had sold.
Oh, so they sold them in advance?
That is correct.
They weren't selling at the door?
No.
Did you ever have any events where tickets were sold at the door that night?
No.
Would you have any?
We typically shy away from that, to be honest, and we kind of also screen our clients. Typically, we don't have young crowds. We don't have people who have young parties with jeans, and we always have a dress code, make sure that, the crowd is mature and older. So we always try to screen our events.
So again, the only other paid event was something that they sold tickets in advance, and that was the number that the event was limited to.
That is correct.
No further questions.
Does the board have any questions of this witness?
Do you have any other staff to help you clean up?
Sometimes I have one of the staff, but mostly it's me. Again, I don't mind.
No other questions from the board?
Okay.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to ask Mr. Lewis a question on the testimony that he's presented this evening? Questions?
Dex Polizzi, Verona. Mr. Lewis, you said that there have only been 2 paid events. I've already referenced one, you referenced another, but I'm looking at an advertisement for another, for Wally B's 60th birthday bash with Viola Sykes. Dress to impress, tickets on sale, $40. Buffet served, 8:30 until 1 a.m.
I'm not aware of that at all.
Palmetto, 10 Park Place, Verona, New Jersey.
Again,
Peaches.
I'm not aware of that at all.
Was Peaches your contact for the rental?
That was the one event that you mentioned before, yes.
No, this is a different event that I mentioned before. This
Peaches
one was on
was
February 22nd. The first one was on January 25th. So these are just 2 events back to back, months apart. So were you just unaware that people were charging for the events at your venue?
Peaches only had one event that was in February.
And then what about the other event that I referenced in January?
That was not Peaches. That was not a paid event. I'm not aware of that event.
Okay, so you're not aware that I'm not really sure what to refer to your partygoers as, but so were you just unaware that they were charging for these events?
Again, I was not informed they were paying, they were charging. Again, we had 2 paid events, and Peaches was one of them, and she was in February.
Well, I've explained to you already that there's advertisements on the open internet that there's more than 2.
I have no idea where your sources come from, but I'm not aware of those sources.
It's Google and Facebook. And Palmetto Venues is advertised as the hosting venue for these.
Again, I am not aware.
Okay, I'm done.
You don't want to get confrontational. Is there anyone else who has a question of this witness?
And I'd like to say one thing. This gentleman behind me, I spoke to him one time. That was because when I first got there, I think about the first month or so, we had 3 trash bins. And sometime, at that time we had about 1 trash bin. And some of the trash bag was on the floor. And he came to me and he told me, listen, typically you should put the trash in a bin so it doesn't attract rodents. I said, absolutely fine. I said, is there any other issue? Please let me know. And after that, we went and purchased 2 more trash bins, two bigger trash bins. After that, I have never heard not one complaint from him. He never came to me. He never addressed me for any other complaint about loitering, noise, trash at all. I spoke to him one time, and you could ask him again.
We're good.
Thank you.
Counselor?
Did the board want to make comment?
I would say, if you're finished,
I'm sorry, no further witnesses.
No further witnesses? Okay. Then at this point, it would be appropriate for the public to make statements about this application. I would ask only that you do not repeat each other, and please provide information that will help us to deliberate.
Hi again, Dan Kaufman, Verona. And this is on the security discussion. Was there negligence? Did the owners know or should they have known about a potential danger but failed to implement adequate security measures? It sounds like this incident happened relatively quickly after the event closed. Did they ignore unruly or aggressive patrons? Either way, with all this talk about everything else, I expect that with multiple shots fired, this should negate any deal. I'm not sure if the police found the spent rounds. I know the casings were found. I don't blame him for that. But where do those rounds go? They end up somewhere. I've lived in some pretty bad places in my life, Detroit, and I don't want this town to turn into Kandahar. So where did those rounds go? Nobody knows for the most part, but they went somewhere. They landed somewhere. And hopefully, well, they landed somewhere. I just don't want innocent lives to be put at risk. I know there's a lot of discussion here. I understand that they are simply the leaseors of the space, basically. But at some point, whether it's their fault or not, shots were fired. And I don't want anybody to get hurt from that. All right, thank you.
Emily Polizzi, Verona. Okay. So, the allegation that Palmetto Venues operated without issues for 1.5 years is false. We made repeated calls to Verona Police Department, also communicated directly with township officials during Palmetto Venues' 1.5 years of operation prior to the events of March 15th, 2025, relating to violations of the township's noise ordinance, issues of trash littering the property, improper disposal of trash and recycling, concerns related to parking and traffic, as well as problems relating to the patrons of Palmetto Venues loitering and engaging in activities disruptive to the quiet enjoyment of our homes. Our complaints to Verona Police, etc., occurred on virtually a weekly basis, typically on Friday and Saturday nights when events were hosted, which regularly violated the noise ordinance, playing music or utilizing speakers and amplification systems beyond the 11 p.m. cutoff. However, the nearby Avenue Bistro is held to the same noise ordinances and is able to regularly abide by said noise ordinances. We hear their music too until 11 p.m. It's off at 11:01. The amount of trash generated by events hosted at Palmetto Venues littered the parking lot during their time of operation, as well as Park Place, and often ended up on our property, as well as the Peckman River, which is also partially on our property, and the adjacent properties of our neighbors as well. Furthermore, the disposal of trash was often done at inappropriate times, with garbage and recycling piled up on the sidewalk and along the street for sometimes a period of almost 1 week before it was finally picked up. Patrons of events hosted at Palmetto Venues regularly engage in illegal parking practices, parking in undesignated spots, as well as obstructing driveways on Park Place. Furthermore, the traffic and illegal turnarounds on Park Place regularly impeded the flow of traffic, to the point where at times we were unable to pull into our own driveway to park our vehicles due to the obstruction with illegal parking and driving from patrons of Palmetto venues. On numerous occasions, we were actually confronted by patrons on foot and in their vehicles who would shout expletives and make threats towards us as we were attempting to park or otherwise walk on our private property adjacent to the sidewalk, all in the presence of our 2 young children. We witnessed numerous verbal and sometimes physical altercations between patrons during and after leaving events hosted at Palmetto venues. These fights, again, were not only witnessed by us as neighbors, adults, but our 2 young children. Again, we made numerous calls to Verona Police Department, etc., regarding these concerns relating to the violations of the noise and the trash and the improper disposal of trash and the illegal parking and the improper driving and the altercations, and all of these complaints were made prior to March 15th, 2025. I just want to say, in the application, it states that alcoholic beverages are not served. Alcoholic beverages are definitely served on-site at Palmetto venues. And one look at the trash littering the parking lot or all of the empty trash and recycling placed out on the curb tells this story, as well as the fights between intoxicated partygoers almost every weekend. In the variance, Palmetto venues, the applicant states that those fire code violations are an arbitrary and capricious enforcement action and are thus invalid. In Dr. Reese's statement earlier, we were not aware, it was given to the landlord. However, these were addressed to Palmetto venues, but apparently it's on Kim John, the landlord, so I'm left to assume that no action has been taken in the past 6 months to address said fire code violations. To seek a variance, the applicant must be facing an undue hardship that's stated in their application, and that hardship must be self-imposed. The applicant was given a deadline of April 30th to submit documentation to the township that they intended to apply for the use variance. It's now 5 to 6 months past that initial deadline. How is waiting 5 to 6 months to be heard before the board not self-imposed? And finally, because this is all I'm going to say about the events of March 15th, it's unsurprising that it was wholly absent from the variance application. I actually wasn't sure it was even going to be brought up in the discussion tonight. But no one has forgotten the 36 shots that were fired or the 4 people wounded by gunfire. I stated this at a town council meeting immediately following the incident. We arrived home to our house at 11:01 p.m. We did not turn onto our street because we saw an ambulance coming down Bloomfield Avenue, and we know how people drive at that intersection. We heeded to the ambulance only to disappointingly watch it turn onto our street to see 50 to 75 partygoers pouring out of the parking lot into the street. It's 11:01. The music is banging. He said it ended at 10. I called the police to report the noise violation. I don't know where that ambulance was going. Ma'am, we're aware of the incident. There will be a large police presence on the scene soon. I didn't know what he meant, the incident. As we are taking our sleeping children out of our vehicle 100 feet from active gunfire, police are swarming the street. Crime scene tape is being setting up. And my daughter wakes up with lights flashing in her face. What is going on, Mommy? I'm scared. Are we okay? Are we safe? I could not answer that question. And until this goes to a vote tonight, I cannot answer that question. I need to be able to answer that question for my children, that we are safe in our home, and we are safe here in the Township of Verona. If this variance is granted, I have to know, and this is a rhetorical question at this point, how will Palmetto venues uphold accountability and keep safety and security at the forefront of their operations in light of the events of March 15th, and take accountability for everything else that came before that time? I remained a very concerned resident and neighbor. I really appreciate your thoughtful attention to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Polizzi.
Hi, I'm Meejan Caristia, Meejancaristia, Verona. Hearing everything, I'm not going to reiterate, what everyone said, but in hearing just that they probably shouldn't have gotten approved to start, I feel like that's the main issue. And I get that the Lewises did everything they thought they should do, but sometimes sometimes bad things happen to good people. But if it wasn't supposed to be approved to start, then I don't even know why all this conversation is happening. So if it wasn't approved, the person didn't have the rights or they didn't follow the rules, shouldn't we just go back to that and say that they need to rectify everything they didn't do, even if you've invested all this money. It just, yeah, it's a bad situation for everybody, but that's where it should, I really start. Regardless of all the things that have happened, it just should not have ever been approved. Like thinking that there's 2 bathrooms, to support 150 people. There's all this parking, there's not enough parking, like just all these things. It just doesn't feel like this is a space for an event. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dex Polizzi, Verona. I moved to Verona a decade ago because it's a safe, neighborly, charming, and peaceful community. But what's been happening at Palmetto Venues since its opening has shaken the peace to its core. For months, what is amounting to years now, the families on our block have lived with pounding bass, shouting crowds, car horns, drunken, violent guests spilling into our streets late at night. It's not just noise, it's disruption. It's the loss of quiet evenings, the loss of the safety of our children, and the loss of the peaceful enjoyment of our own homes. We've seen fights break out. We've talked about this. We've seen guests stumble across our driveways, litter our yards. We've been awoken to police lights flashing outside of our bedrooms. None of this happened before Palmetto Venues moved in. Worst of all, we've now all become victims of gun violence, actual gun violence, because of these partygoers and what happens when hundreds of them are funneled into a building that was never meant to host them and served alcohol without oversight. No resident should fear another night of that debauchery. Yet, when they're open, that's exactly what we feared. I have a record of interactions with the township officials starting in the fall of 2024, something that was elevated to Mr. O'Sullivan in January with concerns about the safety and noise and disruption. Unfortunately, it took a shootout where 36 shots were fired in a parking lot across the street from my house in order to get the rest of the town to pay attention. The other unfortunate incident is that us, as residents and as citizens, were never given a voice to raise our concerns about this business before it opened its doors and unfortunately changed our neighborhood forever in the worst possible way. I do appreciate this opportunity tonight because that voice is finally being heard. This isn't just about decibel limits, parking ratios. It's about the fundamental premise that our homes are ours, that Verona is a community of neighbors, not a nightclub district. It's about fairness, safety, and the right to feel secure in our own homes. I urge this board, from the bottom of my heart, to see this both as a technical application with limited merits, but also as a human one. The applicant has shown time and time again disregard for ordinances, for peace, and for safety. The ownership has chosen to act in bad faith time and time again, and I can't imagine that we would reward that kind of behavior. So I ask the board again, please protect the families who live here, protect the integrity of our zoning laws, and protect the peace of Verona itself. Unfortunately, Palmetto Venues is a party that never should have started. And I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Polizzi. Are there any other members of the public that would like to make a statement about this application? Seeing none, I would close the public portion of this meeting and turn it back to you, Counselor, for a final wrap-up.
Yes, I'll keep it brief, I promise, because I know it's late. I want to thank the board in advance for time and attention in this matter. I would just like to thumbnail what has already been testified to. My clients acted in good faith at all times. It was never an attempt to deceive this town, pull the wool over the eyes. They applied as they're supposed to apply. they received permission in that August letter from Mr. Epps. Based on that, they hired a contractor who submits the plans to the town. The plans were approved by the town. Once the plans are approved, construction starts. Normal inspections are performed on plumbing, on electrical, on every aspect, on insulation, everything that has to be done. All normal construction inspections were performed. They all were passed. They spent $250,000 doing this. They open up. Growing pains in the beginning. They testified they weren't aware they couldn't be open till 12 or music to 12. They stopped until 11. Ironically, this party ended at 10. They were very explicit about the people, about controlling the number of people. They have a written contract. That's what they set up for. They're allowed 150. To be safe, they only do 120. That's the table and chairs. They never had a situation where it exceeded, but if they had to, they would have told those people they had to leave. It was that simple. The paid events were not paid events at the door, which were prior events, like that dating event. That's far different from just open tickets at a door. They're not a nightclub, and they never tended to be a nightclub. These are both professional people. They're both in the healthcare industry. One is a PhD. These are not the type of people who cause problems in a town or to try to do something that brings them self-disrespect or their business disrespect. I know this is not evidentiary, and I'm aware of that. My client whispers to me, oh, there is a sprinkler system now. I don't know, should have testified to that earlier, and I know that's kind of moot, but that's even there now. The night in question, the incident happened probably about 10 to 11. My client testified the doors, the last few people built it out. We've all been to a million events of this type, whether it's an AMVETS hall, a VFW hall, a private catering hall, where you bring in your own food, you bring in your own liquor. Most of the ones I've been at, or ones I've thrown, I've never been required to have a licensed bartender there. You set up your beer, your wine, some other stuff on a table, and who wants something, they take it. This is the only place I ever heard of that requires a licensed bartender who has his own duty and responsibility about serving inebriated people. And every party, you have those who leave a little earlier, those who leave as soon as it shuts down, and those, like my wife, who tends to be one of the last people out the door all the time. So you don't have this mad rush, and this party only had 80 people. My client can't control a criminal act of somebody in the municipal parking lot almost an hour after the party officially ended. Regarding blocking, I don't deny that it may have happened, that people's driveways are blocked. That should not happen. Frankly, if that happens, you should be calling the police immediately. That car should be ticketed and towed. That's conduct that is not acceptable. Never acceptable whatsoever. But again, my client can't control that. And no business can control that. A restaurant can't control that. So my client shouldn't be held to a different or higher standard. And again, it's a legal issue between council and I, but I believe there's an equitable estoppel issue here. They relied on their detriment to what the town said they can do. And again, I repeat, I think it's unfair to say, well, we're going to judge you now. No, you judge them ab initio, as this was in the beginning. There should be blinders, and I'm not being facetious about that. They've addressed what had to be addressed. They were told they needed more garbage cans. They got more garbage cans. They were told they had to come in not at 5 o'clock, the empty cans had to come early. They were brought in. There was issues with the noise. They took care of it. Everything that had to be done, they've done. But to say, because of the elephant, there was a shooting in March, we're now going to pull your license and deny it, that's not right. Because I submit, if they came here in the beginning and they were told you needed an application, I think that, I can't prejudge, but it would have been looked at a lot more favorably than it's being looked at tonight. And I don't think that's fair to my clients. They spent a lot of money and they did everything that they felt was right.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay. I'm going to open this to board deliberation and say that we actually have a very unique situation here. Most of the time, this board only gets to consider applications on paper. Pictures that come in, testimony from a bunch of witnesses. In this particular case, we have a great deal of post-built background. This would be wonderful in some of the other cases. If we had this, we may not make buildings so tall, we may not make them so close. So there's a lot of unique niceness to having that after effect, after our approval or disapproval, to be able to look at it and consider it. In this particular case, I would look and say the zoning board typically focuses on a building and the property for the site. In this case, I would lead and say I have some concerns with the lack of windows in the site. I have concerns with the exits, how they're used, what the plan is. I have concerns about the parking and volume in the neighborhood that creates traffic at specific times. I have concerns with the proximity to the residential neighborhoods for an event space of this nature. And I have concerns that it's part of a mixed-use property. Some of the other event spaces we've discussed or brought up are standalone properties. The fact that we've heard about loitering, loud music, witnessed altercations, some type of garbage concerns, et cetera, have all come into play and would probably only be supposed if we actually had this hearing back in August of 2024 or 23. So at this point, I would like to suggest to the board members that in our deliberations, we emphasize concerns that would have concerned us in August of 2023. And I would open it to whatever comments you may have.
Yeah, I was going to say that exact same thing. I just scribbled down. If this came to us in August of 2023, would we have approved it? And I think I share similar sentiments as Dan in that the traffic and parking, I would have expected to see testimony about that. And then the trash and then the noise, particularly related just to zoning. And then, of course, I would have stated that this is subject to a full building code analysis.
So this intersection where it's located is probably maybe the second busiest intersection in all of Verona. I mean, it is, yeah, it is prime real estate right in our town center. And I know we heard a little testimony about being complementary to other businesses, that there was a few caterers mentioned. The patrons that are coming to the location, they're event spaces. They typically drive in, have the event, drive home. So it's not necessarily complementary. Particularly in this area, the caterers that are mentioned, they all have delivery trucks and would be able to provide the catering services if it was somewhere not in the prime center of a prime location in our town center. Also, along with that, with the event spaces, people that come all at once, they leave basically all at once or within minutes of each other. So Christy, you mentioned, a traffic study that I definitely would agree with that. Testimony around the parking in the area, about what spaces are available in the municipal lots, timing of that, enforcement of those areas. Given that there could be 100 cars leaving all at once, if there's both event spaces, both rooms are being used, that's a maximum occupancy of 215 people. Even if there's 2 per car, that is over 100 cars. And if anyone ever gets stuck at that light at Park Place and Bloomfield Avenue. That is chaotic. And with all those people leaving all at once, they probably haven't seen each other for a while. So I would say loitering is actually very natural to be outside of that space, that they want to kind of keep the party going, keep talking to each other before getting into the car. And now, while the owners of the business they can't directly control what happens, this type of business in this location, that lends itself to the loitering and then everything that might happen after it. Not to mention any kind of safety and architectural plan design that we don't have an expert testifying as to those items. And then there's the noise, the garbage, so on and so forth, just kind of adds to it. So.
I have the same comments on parking and traffic. It would be hard for me to rule on this without knowing the impact of the traffic and parking, and how this space may differ from one of the approved uses on parking.
This is probably one of the more difficult applications for me to vote on. I am concerned about the lack of windows in the building. I am concerned about parking. I would like to have seen more bathrooms in this for all the people that are coming into these rooms. But more importantly to me was the kind of noise that we have been told has resulted from this particular event planning place. And the concerns that I have also for the people of Verona who live here and want to live peacefully. So all of those things together make me concerned about this particular application, and would like to reconsider it some other time.
I mean, I'm also on the thing like, okay, the town approved this. Now, it's hard for me to sit there and say, okay, let's go back on everything that we approved. There are certain things that, okay, we approved it. We made mistakes. We had our building inspector look at this. We had our fire marshal look at this. We had everyone in town look at this, open it up, and had the mayor at the opening. So but fire marshal always has the right to come in. Fire marshal always, no matter what, has to be able to do it. So the facility that's there has to be made, like those things have to come into consideration. Those things have to be resolved before I think we can get it going. But I have a hard time myself saying, no, this thing can't be here because they did do everything that they're supposed to do. But I think what we got to do is make sure that what we have here that's in place, we make sure that does meet safety requirements, that we do things that are proper for the people who are going to be in the space and occupying the space.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective and, just based on, how we're kind of looking at it, had this been the first time, I'll be consistent with, previous remarks that I've made when looking at these kinds of situations. I mean, it's a situation where I just can't. I mean, I was looking to hear what the community's interest was, and it seems like it's just a static sublease with kind of just a hands-off approach. It's not the windows thing. I understand was brought up from an alcohol, from the alcohol perspective, but it's not kind of visible from the outside. It's not a regular connection into the community, and I didn't hear a change on really anything along the way going forward besides, some incremental kind of facility things. I have a hard time kind of grasping in the utilization where it's a roll of the dice every single time with the utilization of it, who utilizes it, the control of overconsumption and everything else. in the location where it is. And, I brought up the parking. I mean, it's always kind of been an issue for me. It's not controlled because it's kind of a distribution in terms of what folks are expected to utilize, and with the anticipated potential size of this venue, it's just a massive capacity that would be exhausted, in single timeframes. And I think that because of the potential of not knowing the utilization of it from, one to the other, we're opening up just the doors for, private events and not knowing what kind of events, and spot zoning on nightclub potentially into this location. I have a really hard time. If it would have been the first time or this time, it's the same concerns either which way. So in the same remarks that I would have made then, I make now, and that's where I'm at.
I think too, given that you really have the same operating hours as the Avenue, where that parking lot could just, from the Avenue, the occupants gets kind of crowded sometimes on Friday and Saturday nights. So then you'd be kind of, using the entirety of that parking lot, if not more. But one thing that I'm thinking of that I kind of keep coming back to is, you seem like incredibly business savvy people, and you're doing the best that you can, and I really appreciate that. But is this the right space for your business, right? So to have, like the loitering thing, to Scott's point, which is kind of a natural, fallout of what it is that you do, is this the right spot for that, given that it's right next to a residential zone? I think that regardless of, the traffic studies and whatnot, I'm going to kind of keep coming back to that. This is and granted, it should be, parties should be fun and loud and exciting and have lots of people. And is this the right spot for that? And I'm not so convinced that it is, even if we had a traffic study.
Yeah, Chris, and I know that we're not, I know that we're not supposed to, be able to compare with everybody. I would have expected we looked at, there's been situations where it's been a quarter of the size for a tenth of the use, and we've looked at traffic studies. We've considered those factors because of this, what I've used before as the 5 points of room. I just did not hear compelling arguments to change considerations. That's why I'm just having a really hard time understanding this.
One of the other things I think we need to consider is when we grant a variance, it goes with the land. And while the current occupants are very responsible and have presented a very responsible approach to running their business, that's granted, and it's part of a mixed-use property, so it can, if they found a much nicer location, we're not sure exactly what would happen, but it would be available as an event space in perpetuity without restrictions or constrictions. And that's always a concern of mine is the mixed-use properties and approving. Right. Right, approving variances for different spots other than what actually, the many things that are approved for that location. I think we've heard from everybody.
I'll make a motion to deny application 2025-10.
Okay, we have a motion and a second is needed.
I'll second.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, may we have a roll call vote?
Mr. Tully?
Deny.
It's a motion to deny, so a yes vote is to deny.
So I just say yes.
Yes to deny.
Dr. Reese?
Yes to deny.
Dr. Cortez?
Yes.
Mr. Mathewson?
No.
Mrs. DiBartolo?
Yes.
Vice Chair Weston?
Yes.
Chair McGinley?
Yes. By my count, the motion was approved. Our council will draw up a resolution to that effect that'll be reviewed at our next meeting. Counselor, thank you. Folks, is there any reason to go into an executive session this evening?
We do not have a meeting next Thursday. It's 11:30.
Okay, no reason to go into executive session, and no, we do not have a meeting again next week. Our next meeting is November, and I believe we have 2 applications on the agenda. A pool that requires 5 bulk variances and a use variance, another use variance. So I appreciate everybody's attendance so that we have the quorum. That's just the 2, right? Okay. November 13th? Okay, then I think I heard Edith say move to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Good. We stand adjourned till November 13th. That's a planning board.